Hello everybody, and let's exit to port. It is currently the 23rd of May, 1931, Central European summertime, and I join you from a very warm northern Norway. Well, I say very warm. Warm compared to what we usually have. The snow is gone from the ground, that's still left in the mountains, but it is now the time of the midnight sun. And speaking of son of the midnight, Mr. Grumbles is here as always.
Oh wait, I'm not playing a vampire right now. Hello.
Hello. And as probably the title and everything in front of you, if you're watching on YouTube, tells you, we have a guest with us. Mr. Bloke of Stats, welcome in to Exit to Port.
Time listener, first time caller.
It is actually truly a joy to have you here. I've been wanting to have you as a guest since pretty much the start of the podcast, and so being able to sit down and have you as a proper guest here feels very good, and I'm pretty sure our listeners are in agreement.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, you guys keep me once every now and again. You keep me company on a dog walk, so I really enjoy what you guys talk about. And just sitting listening to you guys chatting to each other doesn't really matter what you're talking about. It's just a really nice experience. So so thank you for making the podcast.
Wow, that's very kind. Compliments will get you a long way in this podcast.
He's not wrong.
I'd just like to clarify that the reason you haven't been on is not because I was resisting it in some way. I just want to make sure that's said, because Tiger was so clear about, I've wanted you on since forever. So I think I just say that for the sake of
Yeah, the guy. No.
We it's just finding a good time to bring guests on where we don't have a lot to talk about already, and so on, and finding a good topical conversation we can all have. And it's never been a doubt in my mind that we're going to have a good conversation. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, because I have a feeling there's going to be plenty to talk about, and for the first time I might even have to do some rather severe editing. I don't know, we'll see. On screen you will all see topics, and it should also be listed in front of you if you hear us. Wow, there's my Norwegian brain kicking in. If you listen to us on Spotify or other places where podcasts are available, you should see the topics. And while we were having our editorial meeting...
Hey.
I got to do an editorial meeting, I'm so happy.
The ball quickly got rolling on topics to talk about, and since we're all World of Warships players and streamers, it wasn't long before we had plenty of topics to talk about there. So let's just start at the top and then work our way through, because there's plenty happening in the World of Warships. There's a lot of communication coming out of Wargaming and also Lesta, and mostly with the roadmap of what they want to do in the future. A lot of people are looking forward to that, and there was a recent what is it they call that under the waterline or something, with Bugsy and Askance.
Waterline.
Yeah, waterline. Where they talked a bit about upcoming things, and also recent official streams have also talked about upcoming features and things they want to do, or are looking to do, not just want to do. And one of the things that popped up was the beginner experience, and that is certainly something that we've all touched on as we sat down with World of Warships for the first time. We have now played for quite some time, and the game has evolved significantly, at least since I started, and I think that also goes for the both of you two. So let's just start with Stats. The beginner experience, what was that like for you?
It's so hard to remember, and I think that's part of the problem, is that when particularly content creators, but just anyone who interacts with the community and is commenting on YouTube videos about World of Warships, or is joining into Twitch chat and Reddit and things like that, experienced players forget what it was like. And so someone will come in and ask what probably gets interpreted as a stupid question, but actually it's a really sensible question, because that information just might not be available. And so, I've been starting to do recently these tutorial streams where once a month I might do it more often than that actually, but once a month I'll say, right, okay, Today is just about teaching. You can ask me anything you like about the game and I'll try and help you. And some of the questions that come up are really interesting. I think a lot of experienced players, because I've got a really lovely community who aren't going to jump on anyone for asking a apparently stupid question. And so everyone's really super helpful. And I think a lot of my viewers find it really interesting when someone pops up and asks a question which shows that they fundamentally don't understand something that's really, really core to the game, like overmatch, or how to avoid being deleted, or how to get the markers up on the minimap, how to get the health bar above the ships, because that stuff isn't default. And I think players who've been playing for a long time forget that it's not default information and forget that it's not in the game.
How do I see the ships on the side and everything?
Yeah. How do you... Why do you have the killed ships on your minimap? How do you get how do you get the health bars above the ships? These are really common questions. And they shouldn't be. There's no reason why that should be hidden. And I understand that Wargaming's design approach is try to keep it as clean as possible, so that by default, there's not that much information being thrown at the player. But some of that stuff is really, really important. Because by default, you forget. Like, by default, the game doesn't show you what the ship is that you're looking at.
Yeah.
So you see a ship across the map, and it's just a ship with a health bar without any numbers on it.
That's true.
And it's not going to say, like, the battleship is this and whatever, and the player name. And you have to hold Alt by default to see that.
Yeah.
And some people just don't realize that's a thing, and it's like fundamental. And so the first thing I would just say is just give people an easy time if they ask questions like that, because you might have forgotten what it was like.
Definitely.
And it's a really interesting experience to go through, because a couple of years ago I started to make some tutorial videos, and then Wargaming started to change everything with the UI, and so I stopped. But yeah, well, it seems like every time I try and make a tutorial, they change something. Which is a good thing. Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't change things for the better, but the timing sucks, in terms of my content. But so
have we just accidentally unlocked the magic solution to making Wargaming?
Get me to make tutorials
and War Thunder to fix their UI. Just get Stats to start making tutorial videos.
It also works. It also works, by the way, if you think a tier 10 is too strong and you want it to be nerfed, all I have to do is get to the tier 10 and it immediately gets nerfed. It happens. I'm like, oh, cool. Henri's like totally overpowered. I'm going to get to... Oh, they've nerfed it.
I like the idea that you ground up to the Petro.
So I'm just warning you. I'm about to buy a Ragnar.
Come on, man. I love that ship.
So it's just going to get hit with a nerf bat. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I think the request from the audience is already obvious, right? Can you please grind out the Nahimov?
yes,
and
please.
Can you please buy
in
Forest German?
In progress.
So yeah, you mentioned a lot of really good points there, and I think a lot of the reactions from people in game is because they take a lot of things for granted. Like, you ask a question in game, and a lot of these people that take for granted that people know about how high explosives work, or how armor piercing works, or so on, and then it's like, just uninstall, noob. That's the common answer. But I think
honestly, I think in game is probably not the best place to get
No.
Yeah.
But we also see the opposite problem not necessarily opposite, but a similar sort of problem when asking in a Twitch chat. Unless the person you're asking is very aware of what it's like to have that information overload, they are gonna unload everything. Like, they're gonna start at completely wrong place to explain the basics and how to learn them and what to look for, and suddenly you're gonna be sitting there talking about like overmatching and the millimeter strength of armor on the bows of different ships and so on. That is just going to completely overload a new player.
Yeah, and doing these tutorial sessions, something that I try and avoid happening is exactly that. And so, you get someone who's like a beginner. They say, like, I've been playing for a week. Like, okay, cool. And they're asking, like, how do I choose, like, whether I fire HE or AP or SAP? And the answer to that question for a brand new player, for most people, probably shouldn't be going into like the exact details of how pen works and how AP, how the AP moves through armor and like deflects slightly and all this kind of stuff. Like, you just don't need that level of information. You just need some really basic generalizations. And if someone in my chat starts to give them all that detail, I'm like, no, don't do that, because you're going to scare them off. If they're anything like me, then they're just going to get information overload and run away.
Yeah.
What they really need is just the basic information, and then they can build on that as time goes on.
Grumbles, what was your beginner experience?
Oh, wow. All the way back to closed beta. I remember it just being a lot of fun. I was just very, very excited, like that kid level of excitement to play the game. Because I think one of the things, without realizing it at the time, was I was escaping World of Tanks. And this was just so fresh and different. But I think that to some degree, it was a lot simpler. There wasn't as many elements to the game. There wasn't as many you still had to learn the core mechanics as they were back then, but there weren't as many ships. It wasn't as overwhelming. And what I remember distinctly is it didn't take me long to bump into a few people that I just sort of had fun with and sort of div up and whatnot, and get chatting, and what we ended up doing most of the time was not really grinding too much and just playing, like, especially once we got to like the Clemson. It was like, that was like the most fun ship. We had the Ubaris that we'd bought into the game with, and it was just like just playing those ships just over and over in all those little maps. So I had a lot of fun, but I know all too well the things that you guys were talking to. I see the same thing, and we've talked about this a lot when I used to play regularly, a lot on NA and that, and the difference of the experience going from EU to NA and seeing the development over a few years. But we used to talk about this quite a lot with the whole, how do people know when they pick up this game and play it? What the heck's even going on? Because there isn't really a solid tutorial. There isn't really a solid explanation. Like, the things are kind of there. Some things are a bit buried and really badly hidden. Other things are there, but you don't tend to, they don't really sink in. It's like a screen flashes up and you move up a level or whatever it's called, and you're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then you say, hey, where can I get rid of the screen and get back to the next battle? Clumsily kind of fumbling a ship around and kind of learning by doing sort of thing. But I've always been a very learning by doing kind of person, so I don't mind that. But I think also the influx of players and the huge player base now, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's enormous compared to where it was back then. I think that they've kind of missed a trick definitely there on helping players really understand the game, not to the extent of being like, in air quotes, professional or like, super good or competitive, whatever, but just even some of the basics. We've had a bunch of people start up in the community over the last couple of years as well, and especially in the last 12 months, and people have been kind of like coming back and like like Stats was saying, asking the simple questions. And likewise, we have a community that's very open and willing to share all that knowledge, and there's no real shouty people that are regulars with us, so it kind of works. But you can imagine how it's not quite so easy generally. And of course, the Twitch population on the overall player base isn't necessarily all that high, so Twitch can only do so much. I think there's definitely a gap there for some good old tutorials, you know, as long as they don't move the goalposts every 2 minutes, negating your videos 5 minutes later.
I think World of Warships has been lucky with the Twitch community, because most of the channels out there are new player friendly in the way that they can ask a question without being overwashed with information or laughed at. I don't think that there are many channels out there that would do that. So in that way, the game itself and wargaming have been really lucky to have Twitch on their side. Because here's the thing. I think the community has done more for tutorials and helping new players than the company itself has. Which I find,
I mean, you could think, okay, maybe someone in Leicester is thinking, well, you know, the third party community is doing this for us, so we don't need to put any money into it. But the percentage of the player base that engages with YouTube videos and podcasts and Twitch streams and stuff about World of Warships is probably tiny. I'd love to know what the percentage is, but it's probably tiny. Because the vast majority of players, you know, they log in for like 2 hours on a Sunday after the kids have gone to bed and they've, you know, had their dinner. and they play their 5-6 games, and then that's it. They're done for the week. That's like that is a normal player. And the people who engage with community content aren't normal players in that sense.
No.
It's a very atypical experience that they're having. And so wargaming, I don't understand their approach, because I had it described to me once. I can't remember where I got it from, unfortunately, but think of a bucket. So a free-to-play game is like a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
And new players are being like water being poured into the top of the bucket, and there's a hole in the bottom, and players who've got fed up with the game or bored or moved on or whatever are falling out through the bottom of the bucket. And the game's health is determined by the difference between how much water is coming in the top and how much water is going out of the bottom. And if you've got more going out of the bottom than coming in the top, your game's going to die.
Yep.
And so you need to try and do everything you can to pour as many in the top, which is just basically advertising. And then you need to try and keep as many players in that bucket for as long as possible, because the longer in the bucket, the more they're going to spend money on your game. And one of the things that you can do to tighten that hole at the bottom and stop the water flowing out is give the players a good experience, especially when they start playing the game. And so I don't understand why wargaming, like literally, if you look at the new player experience as it stands right now, you have a, inverted commas, one tutorial, which isn't really a tutorial. It just teaches you how to drive forwards into a cap and then shoot something. It doesn't teach you anything about any game mechanics. And then there's a bunch of actually quite good videos. So now they've got the How It Works series, which are actually really good, to give them credit. But they're hidden in the access levels, and they're not really easy to get to. And then they're hidden in the escape menu. So you press escape, and then there's a list of videos you can get to. And like, again, during my tutorial streams, I've shown that screen many, many times, where you press escape, you press a video tutorial button, and this list pops up of all these YouTube videos. And I've had even experienced players go, "Oh, I didn't know that was there."
Yeah.
It's not hard. Like, just put it somewhere a bit more obvious, like feed the player gradually. And
the gradual part there is so key, because something that I've talked about several times is information and saturation that goes on in the game. Like they pour too much on for what goes on in the game, and it kind of overshadows all these wonderful small little things that they do. Because
I think their answer to that is don't give the information at all. So I think they think that they've said many times, like when carriers were changed to RTS to action style, one of the things they said was, well, we don't want you to control the ship at the same time like you used to be able to, because it's too much for one person to handle. Like, okay, fair enough, that you could argue that. But I think that's their approach as a whole, is we don't want to give too much information to the player because this is an arcade game and it is not what it's about. But like, there are ways that you can give that information to the player without overwhelming them, like,
oh yeah,
put it in the UI, but let the player explore it in their own time. But it's just not there.
Even reward them for exploring it. Because I know other games that do that, and I've played other games that do that, and I've kind of go, wait, whoa, I'm getting a reward for doing this? I want to learn. I want to learn this then. How do I do this? And I actively go and seek out the information, and I sit there and go, now I get to try it out, and then the game goes, hey, here's a reward for doing this. Ooh, cool. Let me learn the others. But only after I've proven that I actually know it. So there has to be kind of a balance there, I feel. But and I feel the beginner experience really highlights something that I just thought about, like just now, because I see our next topic here, and that's the Italian destroyers. The beginner experience for me should be about giving you access little by little and ensuring that you're kind of on the ball before you move on to something bigger and more complicated. And the different mechanics, let's say SAP versus AP and HE, like explaining these things to you in a way so that you know that when you pop up in a ship with SAP, like the Italian destroyers, you know how to use it well. Well, maybe not well, but at least you know the basics of it, so that you can start doing the whole learning by doing process. Because the learning by doing process, my player account is still suffering from my learning by doing process. Battleship startup. And I'm still trying to unlearn some of those things that kind of happened to me through my beginner experience, where I saw the battleship, I saw the guns, and I thought, this is what I want to focus on, and I'm penalized for that even to this day. So the trickle information, it needs to be on point. It needs to be on point. And I think, honestly, if they teach players in a better manner to not focus fully on just one line, for instance with battleships, because then you're going to burn in a cruiser, you're going to get slapped in a destroyer, and that's going to help them keep those players a whole lot more. Like you talked about, the water in, water out kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think they need to make sure that there's a balance between not being too restrictive. So something like you just talked about, for example, they could restrict you from playing, too many battles in a certain class without having played the other classes. I don't think that's a good idea, because then the player might feel too restricted and leave because they can't do what they want to do, which is play the big gun battleships, which is what most players want to do, which is why there's so many battleships in the queue. That's just something I think you have to let happen naturally. But yeah, there are definitely like guided paths that they could do. They could definitely drip feed the information. For experienced players, they could definitely add some more information into the UI. Like my favorite one to pick on is AP Overmatch. Yeah. Why on earth is AP Overmatch? Because it's not like it varies. It's like it's one value. Like HE pen is one value. There's no reason why that shouldn't be in the UI under the AP shell listing, just like it is for HE shells and SAP shells. Yeah. So I don't get it. So I'm really hoping that the stuff that's on their roadmap turns out to be something like that.
Speaking of roadmaps, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to add one silly little idea popped into my head. Actually, two points quickly. One is they have, as you're loading in, you've got the team screens, right? And then you've got an awful lot of screen space, which isn't really used. Well, it's used for these pretty maps, pretty pictures now, which they're nice. And then you've got this other screen, this tab or whatever you can choose to click on that most people are pretty early on click off of because they want to look at the team sheet. Who doesn't? Where they've got tutorial information. Why don't they just take some of that information, break it up a little bit, and put it either side of the team sheet or something, or above or below it?
Don't stand near a bomb.
Yeah. I mean, because there's probably some useful hints or reminders in there that might help new players, that especially casual players that might, pop on, pop off, pop back a month later, that kind of thing. Might be good just to give them a quick reminder, or even they might learn something new that's just come in. Hey, SAP's arrived on these destroyers. This is what it does, or this is the difference, kind of thing in a nutshell. That'd be one thing. And the other thing I think they should do is, they've done these good videos, as you said, Stats. I think they've got to make it fun. It would be kind of cool if, during a battle, say you hovered over something and it's, say, the first time you've used it or you're not sure. It'd be kind of cool if there's something you could interact with, want to learn more or something. Say you could right-click it or middle mouse button or something, and then when you get out of the battle and go back to port, maybe it pops up with a link to the video for that item. That might be a bit too complex, but yeah,
I look at the single tutorial, and then I look at I'm sorry to compare the competitors' wargaming, but I look at Gaijin and the way they do it in War Thunder. Yeah. And the War Thunder tutorials are excellent.
They are.
They're little bite-sized, gamified tutorials that work really well to teach a single concept. And there's dozens of them. And it needs to be something like that, where it just takes you by the hand and says hey, today we're going to learn about HE pen. And you just have this little scenario where it just teaches you about HE pen and nothing else. And then you can carry on with your day and do some battles and then just incorporate that knowledge. And then the next day you come back in, you do another tutorial. This time it's about AP bounce angles or something. Mm-hmm. And you just gradually build up your knowledge. But literally at the moment, you log into the game, and unless you go to third-party content, like Twitch streams and YouTube videos and whatever, you cannot learn the game by playing the game, which is unbelievable.
There really should be something like that. Really should be. And I hope that's what they have in mind now that they're talking about the beginner experience.
We can only hope.
We can only hope, because they also keep introducing new and exciting stuff that kind of heightens the skill ceiling. And for me, at least, something that I'm struggling to learn is the Italian destroyers. Now, for one, I can say that I'm not good with destroyers, period, but the added element of how the smoke works on it and to find their role, it puts me at a loss at least. And there's going to be a whole lot of learning by doing. But what do we think about the Italian destroyers?
So for me, as a destroyer player, as a reasonably skillful destroyer player, so for me, they're really, really, really fun. This week, I've been like, because I waited until early access had finished. I waited until the line came out, and then I just did a reset so I could play through the whole line. Because like I've said on my stream, I'm from the album generation, and I like to listen to all the songs in the order that the publisher intended them to be listened to. So I like to start at tier 1 and work my way up to tier 10. And I've been giggling like a little schoolboy because these things, if you know what you're doing, these things are so much fun. Because the sap, if you catch a destroyer on its own, the sap is ridiculously punishing. It's horrible to deal with, but really good fun if you're the one doing the shooting. And when you combine that, especially at low tiers, when you combine that with the fact that they have really short range, which means they have a really short bloom distance for their guns, you can get a destroyer in front of you, kill it in like 3 salvos, and you can be surrounded by enemy ships and go dark because they're not inside your bloom range, which is really good fun. Because they have such good concealment and they're really fast, and you've got the engine smoke. Or exhaust smoke, whatever it's called, the Italian smoke. Then you can do torp rushes. You can be sort of like a budget Paolo Emilio. The torps aren't great. They're a bit slow. They're not very high damage. But if it's a wounded target, you can definitely kill it.
They have a fairly nice range, though, on them.
They do. And so for me, that's really appealing because I'm primarily a torpedo destroyer player. And so if let's say I've lost a bunch of health because I've done something stupid, which in those I quite often do because I want to have fun. I can then revert. I love ships like this where you can like, okay, I'm going to play it like this at the beginning of the game, and then if I lose a bunch of health, then I'm going to switch the way that I'm playing it, and then you can play it like a torpedo destroyer, which I just love. I love the versatility. I love the fact that I'm enjoying every game, even if I screw up. Because while I'm screwing up and I'm dying, I'm giggling because I'm having fun, and to me that's just like the perfect recipe for a new ship line. So I love them. I think they're great.
I have had a lot of fun in them, even though I absolutely suck in them. Grumbles, how about you? I know you love your YOLO. Have you tried any of them?
So I haven't tried the new ones yet. I think I had a Leone somewhere on NA.
Oh, that's nothing like the same.
But yeah, exactly. I don't think that counts. But the only one I've got is the Paolo YOLO, and I was gonna say exactly the same thing as Stats ended with, is that I know that I'm brilliant at it. I know that it's the best. Doesn't matter whether I do any well, actually, statistically speaking, because I always come away from that ship smiling. I'm literally just laughing my ass off, and it's like, it doesn't matter, win, lose, or draw kind of thing. I don't really care because it's just so stupidly fun. So if the others play like that, I guess I need to get grinding that line.
Yeah, no, there's a few in there that I really do enjoy. What was the first one they released from early access?
Urbina.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh, that one's a lot of fun. That one I've had a lot of fun with, like the ability to go in and, like you say, absolutely destroy an opponent like that, and then just giggle as you rush off. It is a lot of fun. It is. But
top tip for new players of those ships is don't necessarily use the smoke to rush at the ship. Use the smoke to escape from the ship. That's also an option. Don't forget that that's an option.
That is actually kind of a top tip for a lot of destroyers, though. I'd say when you need to run away, like pop the smoke after you. But you know, that's more of a general thing, not just necessarily for all destroyers, though. Should be said. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to getting through those. And here's my problem. I'm still working on my Pan-Asian destroyers. I'm still working on the German destroyers. I'm not up to the Z52 yet. I have so
I'm halfway
many
through
destroyers.
Yeah, I'm halfway through Yu Yang, and they've just added the reload booster, so I'm happy as Larry.
Yes,
it's because it didn't need it, in my opinion, and so now I've got this reload booster that's just insane.
I absolutely love that change. Like, I got the Chung Mu as part of the, like, because of being a CC, I did get it for free because I didn't have it because they wanted to show off the new camo for it, the turtle ship one, the wooden one with spikes on it. which I absolutely love. Great camo. So, being given that, I tested it out on stream, first time with some guidance from viewers. Thank you, by the way, everybody, for helping me set things up. And love that ship. And hearing that it was going to get a torpedo reload booster, I was like, oh yes, hello. That is amazing news. Like you say, it doesn't need it, but my God, I love that for them. That it makes them even more wanted in a game, I'd say, because the deep running torpedoes on them, yeah, you might not be able to take out another destroyer or sub with them, but lordy, you can clean up cruisers and battleships with them, and that's fun. We all love that dev strike on our cruiser with a set of torpedoes. Nom.
Yeah, I've always found the Chung Mu super fun. I gave that one quick go. I was a bit surprised that the reload booster, the cooldown it's as long as it is.
I mean, it didn't need the reload booster in the first place. I don't
exactly.
think it needs to be any quicker.
Bonus. Yeah. And
I'm actually kind of expecting them to hit it a little bit with, not a nerf bat, but like, I think they're going to have to tweak it down a little bit somehow, because I've got a funny feeling it's going to end up being slightly too strong with that reload booster. But
could it end up getting the same reload booster treatment as what's the American destroyer that has that?
Like the Monohanohanahan.
Yeah, there you go. Because it has you hit the reload booster, and then it's still 30 to 40 seconds for it to actually go into effect, and then it's a long cooldown. Could that be a change?
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe.
It might just be a question of whether people get it or not.
Yeah, true.
One of the things that makes a reload booster so strong is the fact that you can put out your normal set of torps, and then almost immediately you can put out another set of torpedoes right behind it. And it allows you to cover such a huge area that limiting or making sure there's a minimum time between launching your normal torpedoes and then launching your reload boosted torpedoes is a really nice way to mitigate that a little bit. But then you're also diminishing the fun for the player that's using it as well, because launching 1 million torpedoes is quite good fun. Says the addicted Venom player.
Yeah. Exactly. I must admit, I did have a really evil smile on my face as I launched the Chung Mu's double set of torps into like a gaggle of cruisers that were sitting on a corner, not expecting them. Quite nice. You see it. I think it was a Stalingrad, a Simulanta, and a Minotaur.
Oh,
I was like, you guys will enjoy this.
Yeah. Catch.
Yeah.
So yeah, Italian destroyers. Good news, everybody. They're fun. Thank you, Wargaming. That's how simple we're going to make that. Moving swiftly along to new things. New French cruisers incoming. Oui. And some of us have been lucky enough to test them out already. Toulon, I like her. She's very different from the normal cruisers, naturally enough. But there are a few things I'm actually missing with her. I would love a reload booster on her. A main battery reload booster, that is. But I can also see why they haven't given it to her. But the rest of them, I think with they've only given no, they're actually out now, since they are in they're done with their preview period, meaning I think we can actually talk a bit about them. I find
ones that are in early access, we definitely can, yeah.
Yeah. So is the Marseille out yet?
Yes, because you can buy it. That's the tier 10, right?
Yeah.
You can, because you can just straight up buy it.
Yeah. So I like them. I think they're fun. But then again, I love sitting bow in with something and being able to smack stuff with big guns, though. But you haven't played them?
So something I'm finding slightly frustrating with this early access is that they've changed the way it works slightly. They've done early access in more or less the same way for the last year or so, where there's that bundle chain or whatever in the armory, and it goes something like a couple of inconsequential rewards, and then a camo, and then a ship, and then a camo, and then a ship, and then a camo, and then a ship. They haven't done that this time, because the only ship in it is the Marseille, which is right at the end, and you have to pay a ridiculous amount of money. It's like $250 or something, all told.
Yeah, I
for
think
a tech tree ship.
Yes, somebody did the math, and it's somewhere around 60,000 doubloons in total, if not more.
Ridiculous.
And I'm saying this every single time. Do not buy the bundles unless you get the ship on first try. Like that it pops up and says, this is what you'll get in this bundle. Unless there's a ship there, don't buy it. Don't buy into it. please, because it's tech-free stuff. So yeah.
So what I would normally do with these early access events is I would use my free CC doubloons to whale the ships through that chain, so that I can say to people like, "Hey, here's the ships," and I can show them, so that they know whether it's worth grinding for or risking or whatever. But this time you can't do that because you get the tier 8 comes out of a mission chain, which takes quite a while because it's week 4 that gives you the ship. The tier 10 costs $250 and it's free in 2 months anyway. And then the tier 9 is pure random chance.
Yeah.
So I can't play them. So I haven't played them.
I'll give them kudos on this, though. The ability to get to tier 8 through a mission chain without relying on random luck or anything like that is pretty good. That I will give them kudos on, but I think they're relying more and more on people buying these random bundles for some strange reason, and it annoys me. It annoys me that they do this with every single pre-release.
Problem is their decisions of what to do with the armory and giving out stuff is going to be entirely data driven, and so the fact that they're going more and more to the random bundle drop mechanics is probably because the players are interacting with it. I'm not going to say like don't like it's your fault, don't do it, but they are undoubtedly they're responding to what the player base is doing. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
No, definitely.
Because they're just going to maximize the amount of money that they make.
I think sadly I might be part of the problem regarding the Schlieffen release, because I threw my well-earned CC doubloons at them for that. I say well-earned with a bit of a wink, because I've been accused of being a paid actor so many times. Oh, you get paid by working. No, I really don't. But you get doubloons, yes, and camos, yes, and what's your point? It's not stopping me from talking badly about them if I want to, but yeah, beside the point. It's like people really do believe that we CCs get paid. We don't. It's kind of stupid. Anyway,
I think it's a pretty fair exchange, honestly. Like just to cover that quickly, I think because that comes up a lot.
Oh yeah.
No, we don't get paid. Yes, we do get free stuff. No, we don't have any rules about what we can and can't say within reason. Obviously, if we're gonna like just do like blatant slander against Wargaming as a company or Leicester Studios as a company, then obviously they're not going to like that very much. But as long as it's well reasoned, well thought out, well explained criticism, they're totally fine with that.
Oh yeah. I've had a lot of conversations with Chegg, just Chegg, who's their new community engagement manager, and he recently called me in a half official manner, and we had a good conversation. And what you say there about giving proper feedback, that is what they'll listen to. Like give them a good feedback as to why you do not like a ship. Like give them a well-worded document and they'll read it. They might not be able to do anything about it, but they will take it into account and they will keep that in mind for future stuff going on. And because they do see everything that goes on in the chat on the official channel. They see a lot more than we think they do, where they take all of these waves of people going, fix this, delete those ships, rah rah rah. Like, what are they,
bad.
Yeah, what are they going to do with this information? They can't do anything with this information because they keep asking why, and then nobody says anything. So if you're listening to this and you want to give feedback to Wargaming, please do it through a CC so that we can ask a few questions and then give it as a well-written thing back to Wargaming and not just CV are bad, shut them down,
Or if you're responding to one of the official surveys that they do at the beginning of every patch or when the new bit of content comes out, whatever, don't just type in the box, submarine's bad. Say, I had this experience, this is why I think it's bad, and preferably, this is what I think you could do to improve it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think you had to call out my monthly responses like that in the middle of, guesting on our podcast, but I guess I'll take it. It's done now.
Sorry, I didn't read the NDA fully enough. I'm sorry.
Submarine's bad.
Yeah, speaking of side rows? What? Hello, brain? What just happened there?
I don't know.
Wow.
What's up with your hedgerows?
I don't know. I haven't had dinner yet. I'm still slurping down a smoothie. Speaking of submarines, I think I
just segued. I think I just segued. Did I just say?
You just segued. You just segued.
Wow.
I'm proud of you. But yeah, speaking of them, I have the word hydro up on my screen. That's probably why it happened. Speaking of subs, we had a tiny bit of a discussion here early on, and many of the reasons why people do not like subs is because they struggle with countering them. And this is where because I have many a bad encounter too, especially in ships that do not have any sort of ASW. That's anti-submarine warfare capability, for those wondering, or weapons. And then I'm kind of sitting there. What am I supposed to do with this? I can't do anything. And you, Stats, you had a great example of a fellow Warship streamer, Mr. Flambass, who people probably are familiar with, where he also had an encounter where suddenly he's left with what can I do? So if you don't mind, can you use that as sort of a background, and then let's talk a bit about how to counter subs. Sure,
and Grumbles asked a really good question during the editorial meeting as well, and I'd like to cover that. So yeah, someone posted a clip of Flambass, I think it was from today, in my Discord earlier, and he's going along in the tier 10 Italian destroyer, which is quite big. It's quite a big destroyer. It's kind of like a mini cruiser. It doesn't maneuver particularly well. And, you know, he's a very, very experienced destroyer player. He's dodged 1 billion torpedoes over the last few years, and so he knows exactly what he's doing with dodging torps. And it's, you could argue it's almost muscle memory for him at this point. And so he's talking to chat, and he's not really looking at the game and like just doing his normal thing. Quite early on in the game, I think. And he's tailing another ship. I can't remember if it's a cruiser or a battleship. It doesn't really matter. So he's tailing another ship. That ship's spotted. He's not spotted. And he's going along like just nose to tail with this other ship. And these torpedoes crop up slightly. The beep, 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 beep of the torpedo alarm. And this sort of single conga line of torpedoes appears. And so he, like, quite casually, he's like, okay, I can dodge those, no problem. He starts to turn. He slows down. The torpedoes are sort of going past him until they don't go past him, because those torpedoes are homing on the cruiser or whatever it was that's like just in front of him. And so they gradually curve towards him, and you just watch his face just go, oh no. As these torpedoes just like, and he can't avoid them because they're homing on the ship behind him essentially. And so he just like puts his head in his hands as the torpedoes hit him. Because everything he knows like instinctively about dodging torpedoes obviously doesn't apply to homing torpedoes, particularly when they're not homing on you. And okay, that you could argue that the players need to change, right? I'm a big advocate of, okay, well, the game's changed. You need to change the way you play. But like, it's just one example of negative experiences that people are having interacting with submarines. Yeah. And I have to give Wargaming credit. Playing the submarines, actually pretty good fun. The experience is quite nice. I don't agree with where they are as a concept. Like, what the submarines are in the game is not really what I have in my head as to what a submarine should be like. But like, it's pretty cool. Like, you get to go under the water, and like all the visuals are really nice, and the sounds are quite nice, and it's actually quite an engaging experience for the submarine player. But for the other 11 players on the team, or 10 players on the team, not so much.
Nope.
And I think that is, as you know, big handfuls, I think that is the issue with the submarines right now. It's not the submarines themselves. They're fine. It's playing against them. And it's just, I don't see how they're gonna get around that problem. These submarines have been in testing now for 3.5 years. And they're still not right.
Many different stages and many different variants.
Kudos for Wargaming for not dumping them on us like they did with the carriers. But they're essentially live.
Yep. Well.
And there's still this interaction issue. So Grumbles, do you want to ask? Sorry, I'm going to take over the hosting. Grumbles, do you want to ask? Sorry, I can't help it.
Don't worry.
Do you want to ask that question that you asked during the editorial meeting? Because I think it was really interesting.
Yeah, so my question was, because the context is that I don't play the game as often of late, and I haven't played as much for quite some time during also the drop of the submarines, certainly in their latest guise. And the other day I had an experience where I thought I'll just nip on and have a quick game or two. chill of an evening, and I took out. I was actually my Vampire 2, the tier 10 destroyer, and I thought, oh, this would be fun. Let's just see. It's a fun little boat. I like playing it. Tootling along. Oh, submarine. Oh, okay. He's about 4 clicks away. Oh, I'll go and kill him. There's no one else around. Charge. I've got hydro. I'm not the fastest, but I'm all right. I'm maneuverable. Rush at him. Worst case, get my little puff of smoke out or whatever, and just go and run away. And let's see what happens. And yeah, try as I might. Try the mixture of trying to catch him and then use my hydro, which is pretty solid on the vampire, and try and find where he went. Would prove to be very elusive. And yeah, a few moments later, after chasing him, I don't know, for a couple of minutes, kind of being a bit stubborn, dwarvish about it, but I was like, look, this is the one thing I do in this battle, and just curious. So I tried to charge him down, and it was a Baleo, I think it was. He just popped up and went, oh, you're still fairly close behind me. In that case, say hello to my butt torpedoes. Launched a line of butt torpedoes, double pinged me, and I was like, oh, chasing the submarine in a submarine hunter wasn't a very good idea. So my question was, what is the general advice? Am I being a real dum-dum, or is there a way to counter them as a destroyer in particular, or is that kind of part of the problem? Or what would be your tips? What would be your advice?
Right. So yes, the the submarine hunter part is kind of interesting. So I think, and this is what I was saying earlier, that the idea that you have in your head of a submarine, maybe you played some submarine games, maybe you've seen some submarine movies, maybe you just know a bit about the history of them. You know, submarine is slow underwater, at least at that period of time it was. They are quite vulnerable when you know where they are, because depth charges should be pretty dangerous for them. If they're on the surface, they don't really have any way of fighting back. So they should be quite vulnerable, and the fast, small, agile ships that can drop bombs on their head and drive up to them and shoot them should be the most dangerous ships for them. The reality in the game now, after 3.5 years of changes, is that it's the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. Destroyers are their food, and it's ironically the battleships and the heavy cruisers that are the most dangerous to them, because they're the ones that can reach out and touch them with ASW from range. So you're in your battleship and you're fighting, you're shooting across the map and shooting some cruisers and like dodging normal torps, and then a submarine pops up within a few kilometers of you, like completely unrelated to what you're doing, just someone else is spotting them. And you just take a couple of seconds out of your day to drop bombs on their head, and then you can go back to whatever it was that you were doing. And if you're in a destroyer, as you found out, in order to go and kill the submarine, you have to go and try and kill it, like personally. And the same with a light cruiser. And the entire time you're doing that, and not only is the submarine really dangerous to you because it's extremely maneuverable, it essentially has a smokescreen that it can deploy whenever it likes in the form of going underwater. Because essentially, in terms of the game meta, diving is the same as smoking. And it can pop up and torp you and then dive back down again. You can't detect it with your hydroacoustic search, which is literally the real world tool that you would use to find a submarine, which I find incredibly dumb. And all the time that you're doing that, you're driving into a position which is probably quite dangerous to you, because you're going to be out of a position that you would normally play in. A lot of players are getting blinkered and they're like, I've got to get the submarine, and they're driving forwards. And then they kind of like look up and go, oh, I'm just surrounded by enemies, or I'm in radar range, or whatever, and I didn't mean to be here.
Can confirm. So been there, done that.
Yeah, and so not only are you having to deal with this extremely dangerous submarine that you have to drive up to, which gets more and more dangerous the closer you get to it, but also you've got to deal with the fact that you're probably going to be spotted at some point, and you're probably going to get shot at by literally everything on their team, because you're probably close to them. And so my advice would be, when you see a submarine and a destroyer, or a light cruiser, is just think to yourself for a second, if this submarine wasn't in the game, would I drive into that position? And if the answer is no, don't do it. It's that simple. Just ignore it. If like you found, it's on its own and you can go and get it, the second question you need to ask is it worth my time? Probably spending the next 4 or 5 minutes driving over there and then trying to find it, and then dropping probably 3 or 4 different volleys, or for want of a better word, of depth charges on its head, because you're not going to kill it with the first one, or the second one probably.
Yeah, so that pretty much sums up. I mean, it's almost as if you've seen an action replay of the game. It's
but we've all been there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So like,
That's the
I
problem.
didn't know. I've just been looking at the numbers while you were talking about it, because I was like, I mean, ignorance is bliss, right? So I was like, I haven't really paid any attention to these lately. And I just had a look, and it's like running speed of the bleh, 28 knots. I'm like, okay, so the Vampire 2 is 35. Running speed underwater, 29 knots.
Wow.
And then I was like, let's have a look at the captain's skills. And so, oh look, there's a buff there if certain conditions are met. And then there's another buff you can pick for like your ping times cooling down if you're detected. And I was like, so basically charging this thing, because I was pretty close to it when I first spotted it. I thought, he's not going to get away from me. Was like, firstly, I'm not catching it as quick as I thought. Secondly, as you just stated, he's going to be absolutely deadly the closer I get, unless I'm like, get to a point where I can somehow circle around him and drop my depth charges on him. And the fact that I couldn't pick him up on the sonar, I mean, I was like, okay, again, ignorance is bliss, but it was like a perfect storm of like, oh, this is...
Yep.
I've just made all the incorrect choices based on my intuition and or having watched U-boat movies.
So, like, to me, it just creates this dissonance, because how you're expecting the submarine to behave, and actually how they behaved earlier on in the testing, where they were slow and they were very vulnerable, it just isn't true anymore. And so a lot of players, casual players particularly, are going to get caught out by that. I get caught out by it all the time, trying to drop bombs on their heads using battleships or whatever. And because they move a lot further than you think they should be able to. Because you like, okay, well, they were there 5 seconds ago, so they can't be very far away from that position. No, that's wrong. You need to remember they can move just as fast as a destroyer can underwater.
And they also have a much tighter turning circle. A lot of them, at least. So we've had plenty of discussions about this in the community, like the effect a sub has. And one of them is the ability to just super dump torps like that. And just an idea that popped up in my head is, instead of doing that doom drop that they do, pop up in front of you, doom drop you, and then just they simply fuck off. Would it be better to have them have a different sort of torp, where you get rewarded for using them on larger ships, like one larger one to hit in a different way for it to maneuver? I don't know, like, it was just
I would argue
right
we already had that
of my head, and it just
I think we already had that. So the whole double ping does more damage for a ship with a citadel. Arguably we did have that at one point and they removed it.
Yeah. But that's because of the ping, I'd say, and that's a completely different kind of
I feel like, but also thinking back on the conversation, my instinct is on it, or my gut feeling is, it would be pretty cool if they went a little bit back towards more real world. So like, I'd be happy with them to be a little bit quicker on the surface, which might incentivize like capping and whatever positional play, and then like, they've just got to be more vulnerable and or detectable. That's the bit that feels like it's wrong, because I basically a lot of the frustration I have is not only the deadly and teaching myself to not to chase them and that kind of thing, but it's like, even as a battleship they are effective, but like, you've got that limit range of where your planes, your plane radius is, and so they're often just sitting on the edge of that or skedaddling really quickly off. And I just feel a little bit like there should be more risk reward in that you can have all those rewards and do all the hard hitting and the rest of it, but then if you get spotted and you get caught out, you're in really big trouble, like really big trouble. And it doesn't feel like it's like that right now. The subs I see, they get wiped out quickly in the games. And again, I'm playing, very casual at mine once a week, but the ones I'm seeing them getting themselves in trouble are the ones that basically have gone out of position. They've gone too far, overextended, and got too close to the enemy ships and just let the enemy ships run on top of them.
Yeah, but you'll see the same sort of scenario with a highly, like with a new destroyer player. You'll see them run themselves into trouble in the same way, because subs are highly specialized destroyers in the current way they work. So, but subs have that free get out of jail card with just diving, like you said, at any given moment, really. And if you have a good submarine captain, then they also know how to keep that dive battery available and keep it topped up a long time. And that's scary. But there are plenty of discussions out there on like how to get rid of the ping from a sub. how can Hydro better detect them without being too overpowered? Because I do feel that, for instance, the 5-kilometer Hydro search from a lot of the German destroyers would be, and actually no, now that I think about it, it should be absolutely deadly for a submarine. It should be, yeah. No,
if you've got a German destroyer next to you and you're a submarine, you should be totally screwed.
Yeah, no, as soon as the words left my mouth, I was like, no, hold on, that should be deadly to it. Never mind, I'm stupid. So, yeah. but one idea that we recently talked about in my community that I absolutely loved is the efficiency of the homing towards any given ship should be, or could be, rather, I should say, could be affected by how quickly that ship is going. So you have less of a homing effect on something like a battleship, tiny bit more on a cruiser, and tiny bit more on the destroyer. Now, I'm not talking the levels we have now, by the way, because they are stupid. I just want to point that out.
So there are differences, but I think I haven't checked, so I can't state that this is true for sure, because it's changed many times during testing. But there are differences, not to the speed, but to the type of ship that's being homed in on. But I think it's the opposite way round. I think you have the least amount of homing on a battleship to give them a chance to dodge, right?
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure about that because they have changed it several times.
But
once again, it makes battleships the least vulnerable, which just makes no sense at all.
Yeah, no, they clearly need to do something about that. And again, having DCP be the only way of getting rid of pings.
Yeah, they've overloaded DCP.
Yeah, sure. I have a lot to say there, but they can't really have a single button to get rid of pings. You need something else to be affected by the same button.
Have you had the experience yet of being in one of the new battleships that has limited use DCPs?
Oh yeah.
And then playing around a submarine?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Let's move on to submarines. Because that just triggered me.
Yeah. No.
Anyway, something everybody's happy about.
Yeah.
Epicenter's gone.
Yay.
So I like the idea of Epicenter, but the way players played it, no, not so much.
That was always my go-to point on Epicenter. People are like, oh, Epicenter. I'd be like, nothing wrong with Epicenter. You know, if you understand it and you play it. It's just that most people clear off to a corner somewhere. Don't play.
I call it Epi Edge.
I like that. Yeah, it's like, let's all go to the outside. It's like, hang on, there's something wrong here. The entire point of this battle mode is being overlooked by half of one team at least. Yeah.
One battle
that was
mode.
Always my problem, but
yeah, no.
So I came up with an alternative, like an alternative Epicenter, which instead of having like a bullseye circle, you have strips across the middle of the map, and so you, instead of it being a circle, you just have like the middle cap is across the center line, like so many kilometer width, and then you have another one, and then another one. So instead of it being concentric circles, it's a row of strips. And so you have to push forwards. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're flank, center, it doesn't matter. You have to push forwards to cap.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that would work quite well. But I've never been a massive detractor of Epicenter. It doesn't bother me as much as I see some other people being bothered by it. But yeah, Arms Race is great. I love Arms Race.
So something that Arms Race does wonderfully is, of course, bring people to the points where the buffs are, and Dirigible Derby did the same thing. They brought the teams towards each other where you will see action, and yeah, no, that is the big thing that Epicenter was supposed to be. You know,
it does have one flaw. The flaw is that at the end of an Epicenter match, at the end of an Arms Race match, it turns into Epicenter.
Yeah. That I'm not a fan of, but I haven't seen a lot of matches go all the way there. Like there's usually a lot of shooting and crying and cursing going on before that, and that's only from me. But no, Arms Race is absolutely fantastic. I have, however, seen some people say that they do not like how Arms Race is affecting co-op. Any experience there from you guys?
No.
So I've experienced other people talking about it. How do I talk about this without sounding like a complete snob.
I don't think you do.
I don't know. I'm afraid I don't have much sympathy for people who play co-op. Like, if that's your thing, fine. It's not my thing. You go for it. But if there's a battle, but I know that there are people who do that, and if there's a battle mode or some new thing that's affecting co-op, then that, there are people who do play co-op as their main game mode, and so wargaming should address that. But bear in mind that this patch has just come out. It's going to take a while for them to get to feedback. Co-op is not their focus.
No.
Because the number of people who main co-op is quite small. But hopefully, if people are filling in the feedback forms and giving them feedback, and again, you can do that via your CCs if you want to as well, then hopefully they'll address that and maybe they'll remove it from the rotation.
Hopefully.
Why did they put it in co-op?
It's a good question. I think it has to do with
just a bit bamboozled that they even did it.
Yeah, no, I think it has to do with the fact that it is going into randoms, and all the different game modes that go into random also are in co-op.
The thing is, if you think about it, standard battle and domination don't make any sense in co-op either.
No, they don't.
Because you never play the objectives. You just drive forward and kill stuff, and then the match is over. Like, the bots don't cap, the players don't cap, even if you occasionally get someone saying like, oh, like cap A. Like, why? Just go and kill things. So, like, to me, co-op should just be a map that has no caps, and you play until everything's dead.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens every single match. So yeah, it's a bit of a non-issue for me because I don't play it, but also I don't see how that's any different to domination not being a thing in co-op.
Yeah, no, exactly. And but to kind of be an advocate for people playing co-op, what I would love to see for them is to have maybe a tiny bit more access to enemies. I've played co-op a few times just because, well, some of the missions in some of the dockyards have been absolutely insanely stupid wargaming. And one of the only ways of actually getting through the dockyard in the proper time without, sacrificing health and holidays would be to play through them and focus on only getting said thing in co-op. And
you mean get 50 citadels on a Wednesday whilst wearing red underwear is insensible?
Yeah. So being able to jump into co-op and do that, when you suddenly get that influx of players in co-op, you need to be able to also then extend some of the matches, because it's going to be so much going on. So, and I am very happy to see a lot of people say, I only play co-op. I was like, sure, play the game the way you want. But what a lot of people would want to do then is to have achievements. Like, they don't give anything in randoms anymore. Why not have them in co-op? And this would allow them to do some of the things that are, for some strange reason, it requires you to play randoms or clan battles, or no, randoms or ranked, some of the campaigns, because some of them say, oh, you have to get X amount of achievements in the game. Why do they have to have that? Can we not have that? Oh, it's the farming of the flags. Oh wait, we've covered that. So, just as a kind of a short trip onto the co-op road there, give them an achievement. It doesn't have to be the same one as in randoms. They don't give anything after all. So yeah, let's just.
Yeah, the ones from randoms just don't make sense in co-op.
They don't. But there could be different ones. Very much so, and I don't see a case against them, honestly.
You could have quickest kill, most damage.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff that they could do pretty simply.
Yeah, just a bunch of baby achievements or whatever, and tailored ones for co-op. I think makes a lot of sense. I think for me the co-op thing is generally, or what it gets me thinking on is always that I feel like there's a lack of solid PvE content in the game. That I think the game would benefit from, PvE or hybrid. We've talked about missions and stuff like that to death. But I don't get it. Like, but on the roadmap, I saw they want to bring back a revised version of that. What do we call it? That convoy thing. I unfortunately missed that last time round. So maybe that would be good. They sound like they're going to make it more fun to be escorting or attacking. But I never quite understood, especially with the huge influx of new players, and then wanting to stay there, why they don't offer more PvE or hybrid content, at least where it's, you know, like the dirigible derby. And as soon as they offer some, it's like, yay! I think most people liked it. And then it's apart from it being locked to tier 10, which was a bit silly. And then everyone's like, yeah, we like this. And they're like, great, we'll take it away.
Yeah.
So, well, that's what I feel like with co-op. I feel like there's a way bigger market for it. Maybe it's not the market that are after because it's not where people are spending money. But I think I don't know. It's their business and they've got all the numbers and everything. But my gut tells me that they're wrong. I think people will enjoy, you know, their game a lot more and for longer if you can offer them that variety of content rather than it being constantly random battles.
So one example here of a game that offers both in a good way, War Thunder, and plenty of the PvE content I've enjoyed the hell out of. And I'm thinking, hey, this makes me stay in the game longer because I don't have to grind endlessly in PvP, which sometimes drives me nuts because there's this guy who has optimized his settings to be able to see me from across the map 50 kilometers away and is able to snipe me, but because I have higher graphics, I can't see him. So like, just give me the variety and then I can go in there, enjoy that for a bit, and then get back to the PvP. And I do think Warships would draw from that. But speaking of other modes, that was there for a tiny bit, but I know that they're going to be bringing back Brawls. Brawls are fun.
Yes.
Did you get to test them, Stats?
Yeah, so I did a little bit with the clan, like a full team div, which is frankly ridiculous, but it doesn't matter because it's, you know, it's a casual game mode. It's only there for a week. And so people who are complaining about, oh, this is like totally unfair, like just a bit of fun, like relax. So yeah, playing with a full like COTS team is like ridiculous because you come up against a team of randoms. And but what's really interesting is that you can take a proper COTS team and make a team out of it and go into brawls and then get beaten by a team of randoms who have no divisions because they behave completely randomly.
Yeah.
And if you're like a proper organized team that's used to playing together against another team that's organized, it can actually take you by surprise because you end up with ships in positions they're not usually in and torps coming from weird angles and the cruisers not being parked where they normally park. And so I've seen that a couple of times where an experienced team has been beaten by just randoms. But yeah, it can be pretty amusing. Where you just steamroll, but I like the big team. Basically the brawls we've had most recently is just randoms that allows large divisions essentially.
Yeah.
The brawls I like that I want to see come back regularly is 3v3 and 1v1. I flippin' love them. 1v1 especially. I absolutely love 1v1.
I met you
because
in a
there's
1v1.
no excuses. You can't say, "Oh, I had a bad team."
I met
because you are the team.
I met you in a 1v1. You were in Massachusetts. I was in the Turpits.
Who won?
Yeah, I won because of my secondaries were slightly better. Yeah. But that was the only reason. But it was so much fun. But speaking of fun, Grumbles like brawls the way we had them this time. Tell them why.
Because we could bring in all of our community. You had me scrambling for a second there, and my brain derped on me. I was like, wait, what was it? What was there a feature? So I was like, oh no, yeah, because we just put a call out to everyone that was watching and said, hey, come and play with us. Ooh. And we just had loads of people just pinging us and bringing them in, and it was awesome to be able to bring so many people in, like into an actual, you know, it's great you can do it in a training room, but there's always the setup and the downtime between, and people wanting to change and having to dip in and out and all the usual. Yeah, exactly. And now we were able to have everybody just effectively playing the game more or less like normal, but hanging out together and having some fun and calling shots and ideas without it being like uber competitive. It was just super fun, and also have some laughs and jokes and banter. I even turned my chat back on for the duration, which I immediately regretted the next time we got out into a normal random battle.
Go play Tetris, noob.
Yeah, there you go.
Stupid stuff.
Wasn't far from it.
So yeah. Well, I really, really liked that you could bring so many people in and gather. And it was similar to when they had the clan, which one was it? The little clan brawls or whatever, the 5v5 or whatever it was, some 5 or 6 or something like that. That was super fun. But obviously then you had to organize it, get everyone together. We had time zones involved and all that kind of stuff. So it was a bit more awkward. This one's nice. And I do get your point, and I think it's a really good point that it's kind of a throwaway. You can have fun and relax because in a week it's gone and it means nothing. But I also think it'd be cool if, like, I don't know how they do it, but it seems to be that it completely stops then, and it's like, why not just have it a weekly thing, like your naval battle sort of whatever, but actually a game mode, and then just reset it and go again, and then people want to play that, they can play that.
I think they have a concern about queue times. I think if they've got too many things going on at once, the players will be too split across all the different modes, which is why they've started to time limit ranked and things like that. But
you know what I'd really like to see? I'd really like to see the numbers on it. Because I'd love to see, because you can't have subs or carriers in it. I'd love to see how many people, like, not trying to dig up all that old. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm dredging that up again. But like, it'd be kind of funny to see if during when the brawls were running, everybody just piled in there and no one was playing the other mode.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
So brawls, I think it could be cool to see like a weekly game mode where they rotate between brawls, arms race, dirigible derby, and some of the Halloween ones they've had from time to time.
Space battles. My favorite event they've ever done is the asymmetrical space battles. I love that.
Yeah, so have something like that on a weekly rotation where players have the ability to play them during prime time, so that you know that there's also a lot of people in the random queues, and then just have that be on a rotation and let them do that, because I've talked about this whole rotational thing before in regards to PvE content, but having something go on a rotation for a week when it comes to PvE equals bad, but when it comes to PvP, a great idea, because then you have people coming and going and they can do their own thing. So yeah, no, I think that could be good. But you mentioned competitive teams going up against full randoms, and that's going to be our segue.
Nice segue.
Thank you. You have recently done some casting, and you have done some casting in the past regarding what I would like to say is competitive tournaments. Very competitive tournaments.
Yeah, I've done a variety.
Yeah.
Everything from King of the Sea, the big, like the de facto world championships, all the way down to just little little tournaments that are kind of fun. I cast once with TC a little, literally a racing tournament, using destroyers, which was insanely fun. I want to try and repeat that myself, because that was way more fun than you think it would be. I've done everything in between.
Would you want to come on as a co-caster once of the finale of Lord of the Fjord?
Sure, that sounds cool.
Honestly, I don't know why I get so tied into how the bots are doing, but it's very interesting for some reason.
So I've just remembered, Painter and I have totally forgotten about that. We came up with an idea where we were going to run in conjunction with a King of the Sea as like a parody tournament to run before it. Oh wow, I'm gonna have to remind him about this. So we were gonna run a bot tournament. So a bit like what's it called? The one that we've done with the streamers, Team League.
Team League, yeah.
Imagine Team League, but instead of recruiting human players, you recruit bots. And so you're allowed to set the bot team up however you like in terms of the ship composition. But you have to bear in mind that, of course, bots don't use consumables. They don't have camouflages and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is.
And so you and then you just let them go and let them go at it, and have like proper serious but tongue-in-cheek commentary from casters who've got like the cameras and everything. It'd be cool.
That is literally what I've done with Lord of the Fjord now.
Is that what Lord of the Fjord is? That is Lord of the Fjord. Fantastic.
So we've done that a couple of times now, and you think it's casual fun. You get really into it. Honestly, it's weird. It's weird how invested you get into some of these teams, and you can do throwbacks to the moment where so and so's Shimakaze absolutely destroyed the Kremlin. But why is he grounded this time? You get very into it. Honestly, I don't know why. But what is your favorite tournament to cast?
Oh, it's got to be COTS. I mean, it's got to be because it's just such a huge fixture in the World Warships calendar. And I'm including the recent WSC in that as well, because it's essentially the same thing. because you've got on EU at least, you've got hundreds of teams, like over 100 teams, each of which has at least 9 players, probably more. And so you've got literally thousands of players coming together for a month every weekend to fight. And it just somehow the tournament, like the schedule all works and everyone more or less turns up on time and the whole thing runs, and it's very exciting. You get to see some very high level gameplay. And I just as a spectator, I just love casting it. It's really, really, really interesting to be able to see people playing at that level, and you just look at them and you think, wow, like I couldn't do that. I could not do that. Like the amount of information they have to process. Like if you look at the finals, like the final of King of the Sea, like the tension and the amount of focus those players have to have, it's literally like professional sport. Where they've got, and you talk to them about, you know, like the training and stuff, the serious teams, and you know, they'll practice like torpedo timings, radar timings, whether you can lob certain islands from certain positions. Like they work all this stuff out ahead of time. It's not, they're not just pressing battle and going, hey, let's just see what happens. You know, it's serious stuff, and it's amazing to watch. Really amazing.
So you mentioned the viewability of it, like making like the action and so on. And this is going to bring us on to a sub point of why I have this as a point on the itinerary. The camera work. The camera work has been a bit of a controversy in the World of Warships community for a while, for good reason. But I want to ask you this. Do you see the camera work as something that could possibly bring in more viewership of people that aren't players?
I think that's Wargaming's, and when I say Wargaming, I'm now including legally Leicester Studios as well, because they've split and blah, 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 and you've talked about that before, but
yep.
But I'm including the whole World of Warships development community. So I think their hope is that if they have these kind of glamour shots, these sort of sexy panning shots and like close-ups of the ships and things like that, and also they put stuff on the maps, and so they put like big trophies and like the previous winners will be on an island and stuff like that. It's really cool stuff. And I think they're hoping that players who don't really know, in the nicest possible way, players who don't really know what they're looking at will look at that and think, wow, that looks really cool, I'm going to play this game. Because like in the previous King of the Sea, for example, in the autumn, they had Twitch front page for an hour or two. And so we had like tens of thousands of viewers for a little while. And so there's going to be a whole bunch of people coming in via the Twitch front page who've never seen World of Warships before. And, you know, quite a big chunk of those, I would imagine, probably went, oh, I'll have a go at that. That looks cool. Yeah. And so they probably got a bunch of signups. The problem with that is that it's great for someone who doesn't know what they're looking at. But if you know what you're looking at, it's like imagine trying to watch it, like think of a tennis, right? Very different game, but think about tennis. You've got the certain fixed camera views that the broadcasters will use. So you've got like the whole court for serving. You've got maybe like behind the server or behind the receiver. And you know what you're looking at, you know what direction you're looking at, and the camera view will change depending on which stage of play they're at. So if they're doing a bit of a back and forth, you know, you'll have the whole camera, the whole pitch covered, the whole court covered. If you know what you're looking at with World of Warships, not having that kind of camera work where the thing being talked about isn't the thing that's being focused on, can be very difficult to watch, because you want to know I need to see where those shells are landing. I need to see exactly where those torpedoes are going. I need to see if that cruiser is moving backwards or forwards a little bit, because I understand what that means. And to an experienced player and maybe competitor watching that, it's going to be very frustrating to watch. Go ahead.
I'm just going to inject myself in here, because I know what it's like to cast as part of Team League. Now, there's certain things to say about Team League, that it's not King of the Sea, and that's fair, but we get to control our own camera. But it's so hard to keep an overview of everything. So first and foremost, my hat is solidly off and bowing down in front of people like Flambas, Flamu, you, and all the others who have kept a solid control of the camera and knowing where to look at the action and so on every single time, because it's hard.
It is very hard, because you've got typically 9v9, so you've got 18 players on the pitch.
And
you know, that's the equivalent to, you know, like rugby or football or something of that magnitude. And you have one camera. If you're casting with a co-caster, they also have a camera.
yeah.
And you have to try and cover those 18 players who are all playing simultaneously. And there isn't one ball, there's 18 balls.
If not more, because you could have torpedoes, you could have shots lining up, and knowing where to look at that is so important. So my thought, because there were several moments in Team League where I missed the action completely, and I felt so bad, and it really got to me. Like, even seeing just a few comments there, it really got to me. So I can also understand from a caster's view how it's good that somebody else can have the camera, because then you can kind of go, okay, yeah, I didn't get to see the action. However, my idea here that could be good is to kind of have something that they've done in Dota 2 for a lot of the larger tournaments. You have the experienced player tournament casting, where it is pro players that control the camera. You get to see the action from their view. They talk about things. And then you also have the more chilled out view, the more scenic view, where there's more general talk about the game, not necessarily about why the importance of these torps landing or so on, but you get the cool action shots. Could that be a thing for wargaming?
Yeah, the problem is that World of Warships was never developed from the ground up as a tournament casting platform. And so a lot of those other games, like you know, Dota and League of Legends and whatever, like those other big titles that have a proper professional tournament scene, they have tools built into the game engine to help them with things like instant replays and whatever that World of Warships just doesn't have. And so unless Wargaming thought it was worthwhile financially to put money into that, which I don't think it would be,
they should.
They're having to build on top of what's already there, which is frankly not very much. And so, and to be fair to them, like, I get their vision. I totally get it. The way that it works, just for those of you who don't know, when we cast the official like finals and stuff for King of the Sea now, so the co-casters, so in this case it was me and Painzor for WSC, we're sitting in the training room, so we do have our own camera, so we can fly around and have a look at the battle, but our cameras aren't broadcast. The cameras are done by some guys in Leicester. So they'll have a team of, I don't know, a dozen or so people, and they'll have 8 cameras around the match in various positions. So they'll have some high up cameras that are looking at the whole scene. And then if there's anything particular, like there's torpedoes coming in on a particular ship, one of the mobile cameras will go and focus on that. And then they have a director who's then telling or is controlling, I guess, OBS or XSplit or something to control which camera is shown, just like a TV production studio. Which sounds amazing, because then you can, like, with a click of a finger, you can go and focus on whatever you like without having to fly across the map like the casters do. The problem with it is that the person controlling the cameras and the person directing the cameras and what goes out over the feed isn't the person doing the talking. And that creates a bit of a lag. And because of this thing of it being 18 players with umpteen balls, the problem is that we're constantly changing, because we're constantly having to say, like, on the A cap, you can see the destroyer backing into the cap and he's going to come under radar, but down at the other end, you've got on C cap, such and such happening, and B's happening. Everything's happening simultaneously. And so you're literally, like, talking about a different topic every other second. And when you're controlling your own camera and you're broadcasting that, you can only really talk as fast as you can transition the camera. And you can also be talking while you're transitioning the camera. So while I'm flying from A to C, I can be setting up what I'm about to talk about. And also the other caster down the other end can already be talking about it because they're already there. And you can have it in view. It's just that you're zooming in towards it as you fly towards it. And the problem with having these 8 cameras is that when the scene switches, when they click that button and switch from camera A to camera B, it takes the viewer maybe a few seconds to figure out what they're actually looking at. Yeah. Because okay, you've got the little triangle-y thing on the mini-map that you can look at to see what they're actually looking at, but it can be like, which island is this? Which cruiser is this? Whereas if you follow the caster camera like we would do traditionally if you're just doing solo casting, the viewer is watching you do that transition, and so they have context. Like, okay, they're flying from A to C. I get it. I understand the positions of the ships. And it's just, it doesn't quite work. That's the problem. It's a great idea, but it just doesn't really work. And but like they try so hard, and it's so much better now than it was a year ago, because they really try hard. But personally, I think the better way to do it, because they've got like the replay system they have is amazing, because they're constantly, all these 8 cameras are constantly recording, and if something happens, they can press a button and replay the last few seconds of action, which is great, because if the casters miss something, they can just go back and show it. But it just doesn't quite work. And so I think what they should do personally is, they've got the 2 casters in the game with their traditional fly around cameras. They should have those in the production feed, so the director can switch between those context-driven fly-around cameras, where whatever the person is talking about is definitely what they're looking at, and then mix in those other glamour shots for the slower moments. Because sometimes there's like just moments in a battle where nothing's really happening, everyone's just sitting still waiting for something to move, because when you get at the high end of World of Warships, and any competitive sport really, it becomes a lot more passive and a lot more defensive, because the players know that if I make a mistake, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And so everything becomes a lot more passive. And so you do get these moments where nothing's really happening. And that's when they could cut in the panning shots and the sexy promo stuff, or show replays.
Yep.
But then when there's action happening, like, let us have our own cameras. I think that would work well.
That's why I'm kind of thinking of this as like how to bring it up as a more viewable thing for people who aren't players, where you talk more generally about the game, about the impact of the torpedoes, for instance, in this case, or what the implication of the radar sitting at that point, because an experienced player will know why the Stalingrad is sitting next to that island. It is to cover those 2 caps. But having a separate cast that is more noob friendly, to put it like that, I think that could bring in a lot of people, and that's where you need those panning shots. But for the experienced players and for the player base, being able to go and watch your camera would be better, and have that be 2 separate streams, but tie them together in a good way. It's that we're talking very high production here, though, but still, I think that could be a way to go for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And you know, like, you take feedback from the experienced viewers, who tend to be experienced players. They will always prefer that kind of style of casting where the caster has their own camera. And then they won't watch the one that's highly produced, because it's harder to follow. But yeah, as you just said, it also you have to change the way you cast, because if you're casting and you don't know exactly what's on the screen all the time, because it's impossible to try and look at the feed and look at the game and keep up with both of them. So we have to change the way that we talk slightly, because we have to give direction to the guys in Leicester so that they know what we're about to talk about. Yeah. And so we can't do this like switch thing that you have to do. And so you have to like lead up a little bit and say, and while that's going on over at the A cap or over on the 10 line, and it eats up valuable seconds that you could be using to talk about something. And so it just slows the whole thing down. But the problem is the match isn't slowing down. And so then you miss things. And also, like, as you just said, you have to feed in things like, don't forget, Des Moines has a 10-kilometer radar, which is something that I would never say on my own cast, because I know that my audience know that.
Yeah, and that's something I think could fit in a more noob-friendly one, because then you could actually take some time, look at the Des Moines, and see how far does that radar reach, and then you could even do a comparison. Let's say a Stalingrad was sitting here, and see the massive difference that actually makes, and bring in more people.
And they could have overlays.
Yes.
They could like overlay a circle on the ship that's just like, this is the radar range.
Honestly, I would love to be able to sit in such a cast, because I get so stressed out about missing stuff, but I can talk about the mechanics, I can talk about kind of the mindset of the player sitting there, a tiny bit at least, and I would love to be part of that. And I think I think another person that could do excellently in that is Sea Raptor.
Oh man.
Dude,
the number of times I've said to him, you need to be a sportscaster.
He's
like,
so
seriously.
good. He's so good, dude.
He's just, I did, I've done the last 2 King of the Sea internationals with him, and he's just so good at it.
He is
so good at it.
He truly is. And a lot of people told me that after last Team League, me and him together in a room,
Oh man,
it was just straight into that sportscaster role, and I loved having that conversation with him. So yeah, I would love to.
But he's got a proper serious job. I was saying to him, like, seriously, you need to get out of that and get into sportscasting because you'd be amazing. Natural.
No, yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I'm just looking a bit at the time here and thinking we might have to make this a two-parter. I think that's the first time we've ever done that in that case, because I want to cover the rest of the topics here properly. But I want to hear a bit more about casting your tournaments from you. So King of the Sea or the WSC, WCS,
WSC, Warships Spring Championships.
Warships Spring Championship. Okay, so we're gonna have another one, which is Warship Summer Championship, or when's the next one?
It depends what happens with certain geopolitical events that are going on right now.
Right.
I think Wargaming would very much like to bring back COTS as COTS with the internationals in the autumn. But whether that happens entirely depends on what's going on globally.
Yeah. What other tournaments would you recommend people watch that haven't necessarily gotten the same sort of coverage as COTS or WC?
Cool question. So Team League, what we'd mentioned earlier, is really good fun. So that's done biannually, although I haven't heard anything about when the next one's going to be. But
there's a new post on the Discord.
Is there a new post? Okay, I'll go look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So we'll. Did you know there's a new post on they're planning the next? Yeah,
apparently I heard it somewhere. I think it's a podcast I heard it on.
So yeah,
it literally popped up while we were sitting here talking. Actually, so yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a bad. Okay, right. Yeah. So I'm pretty bad with Discord, but okay.
Don't worry about it.
So Team League is really good fun because what it does is it takes a bunch of streamers, typically, and they have to choose a team of basically randoms. So it's a bunch of people who cannot be. There's rules about them not being in the same clan, not being in the same teams. And so you have to take a whole bunch of people who don't really know each other and put them together into a team. You choose a team leader, and then you can be, as the streamer, you can be as involved or as not involved as you like. And your team has to try to, in 1 week, get good at being a team. So they have to maybe practice a little bit, talk to each other, get to know each other. And then after 1 week, it's the first day of the tournament, and they have to go out and fight as a team against another streamer's team. And the streamers essentially become the mascots. And there's a lot of memery going on. The banter in the casting is great. It's a really casual, fun tournament that I've been told is one of the best tournaments that people have seen as a casted tournament.
Agreed.
So I would recommend that one.
I think,
but that's not very serious, that one.
No, but I think that has to do with the fact that we are allowed to not be very serious. We can be biased. We can be passionate. And we can rib on each other and have fun. I think that's what makes it fun for the viewers.
And like, it's because it's fun. And it's a game. Like, Water Warships is a game, believe it or not. And so you're supposed to have fun. And so, it's really cool that, like, if I want to, I can say to my team, like, hey, you guys up for a bit of fun? Do you don't care about winning? Cool. Right, let's just take 9 destroyers and go up the 10 line and just have fun. Yeah. Or like whatever. And some of the teams did do that, and it just makes it really exciting to watch. You're like, oh, that's really dumb, but maybe it will work, So that's been pretty cool. Although, having said that, Bob's did do that in COTS.
Yes, we did.
Just saying, yeah.
Yes, we did. I was there.
So in terms of serious tournaments, there's a whole bunch actually. Some of them get a lot of coverage, some of them don't. One thing I will say is, if you're interested in watching or participating in tournaments, make sure you go and hang out in the King of the Sea Discord. It's not just for COTS competitors, it's for anyone who can join the Discord. Because quite often any tournaments that come up will be advertised by the organizers in that Discord, because the COTS organizers are totally fine with people doing that. And so there's like Saturnalia, which is an NA based one. There's the Benelux tournament that's based around the Benelux countries, although they quite often open it up to other people as well. There's Warships Classic, which is based on ships that were introduced to the game before a certain date. which is really cool. So you've got all the old ships, and so none of the new like HE spamming Dakar boats. And so it's all the old school stuff, which is really cool. And as far as possible, they try and like set it up so that it's like old school World Warships. So those are the ones that just off the top of my head I would recommend, and those are cast by a few people usually as well. So yeah, go and hang out in the COTS Discord and get the info.
There you go. Get your info where it's available. Ask your friendly neighborhood streamer; they might know. And I think that's gonna be the line for our warships talk. But oddly enough, we're still gonna talk about warships, just not the game. We're gonna be moving over to a different game very quickly here. There's a certain other game that we all three play, where I know a bin named Killer is very excited about something coming to it, because the HMS Hood is now incoming to War Thunder. And I think Killer Bin has been quoted saying, "I will play naval when the Hood is in War Thunder," and the Hood is now coming.
This is the guy who metaphorically camped out ahead of the British battle cruisers going into test. I think he like stayed up all night in a tent with a mug of cocoa, and then literally stayed up for 24 hours doing all the testing. I think he did. He literally did the same with Incomparable as well. He stayed up all night because Halo came out, and then in the morning Incomparable came out, and then he got Incomparable and played it all day. So yes, I can believe that.
Ben is a great guy. What's for us normal people who are not necessarily Tiaboos, what's the big thing about Hood, and why should we be excited about it coming to War Thunder? Do we know?
I'm not much of a history nut, but I think it's probably the history, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just such an iconic ship. The stories behind it, what it achieved, and so I'd imagine it's that combination of it being an interesting ship to play mechanically, and then in whatever game it's in, and then just the history behind it.
I can recall a certain Grumbles being very excited about the Sharnorst being introduced into War Thunder.
Yes, it was very shiny and horsey.
It was. It still is.
Mm-hmm.
That ship's a lot of fun. And I can also say, for my sake, the Arizona. When you hit stuff with the Arizona, oh boy, it disappears. And of course, the Congo is also in War Thunder. Oh boy, Pluto. And for a lot of Warships players, you'll probably be interested in testing that up, because the two games play so differently, but there's still something about them where you go, okay, I can feel the resemblance in how she works. So go play War Thunder. Enjoy. We are not a World of Warships exclusive Warship podcast. I just want to point that out.
No, I mean, it's funny that we're like linking a little bit back to the casting topic, but I've never been able to get into World of Warships casting stuff, the content, because I think the people are entertaining. I understand, and maybe it's what Stats was saying. It was very interesting listening to that conversation, but linking this to War Thunder, I think the thing that really puts me off, I never really thought about it in such distinct terms before, but I think it's the production or the camera capabilities of the game really puts me off. It's not immersive enough for me. Funnily enough, I don't really enjoy those games anyway, but things like Dota and that, I've never understood how those, like, they have those massive tournaments and like $1 million prizes and all, and I'm like, what is this? I tried to watch it thinking, oh, this must be something really serious and really good, and I'm like, I don't understand this at all. I think it's just not my kind of game. But the Warships one is definitely the cameras, and I think that the mixture of overlay stuff that we're talking about, I was going to mention that as well. And I don't know, again, it's probably not doable because it's not part of the core of the game or something. But if you think about War Thunder and the cinematics you can get out of War Thunder, right? Ignoring the age-old one sort of Achilles heel of it, not being able to rewind and replays. Grr, fix that. But apart from that, it's, imagine having an action replay where you could do a flyby cam or whatever, right? Position from the pilot's view or the captain's, the conning tower and stuff like that. It would look absolutely stunning. And I think if you combine that with some of the overlay stuff, and I think the good news is that on overlays, they've already got the technology and experience. If you look at some of their amazing video work that they've done, like the How It Works series and other ones, you know that they could do that kind of cinematic kind of overlays and things. I imagine a Des Moines and it's floating forward, and then they just overlay and transition nice fade or whatever into a more drawn out animated kind of sequence with the Des Moines and showing its radar distances and its hydro and its gun performance and that and the statistics. And you know what makes me think of as well as I like from time to time watching the UFC fighting, you know, Ultimate Fighting Championship, and I think about how the quality of their production has come in leaps and bounds over the years, obviously with big money and all the rest of it. It's a completely different ball game. But I think they could learn a lot from what the commentary team, the production team, overlays, and that mixing all of those different things, then the camera angles. They could definitely look at like real sports. That's probably what they do some of this as well. But if they want to go big into esports and go big in that direction and end up with like $1 million prizes and, you know, Dota style and all that, then they have to make the investment somewhere along the line.
Do you think War Thunder could do something with the like you mentioned, the replay and the cinematic cameras they have available? What do you think of a King of the Sea style tournament for War Thunder, but with those cameras available? How do you think they could stack up against what Wargaming can throw at us?
I think it would be really interesting because I think what they could do on the production side with just the camera work and the angles and everything and those kind of animations could be incredible. And then you've got the different scales. And then I think where they might, obviously the naval experience itself isn't quite as polished yet. It's getting better and better each patch, but it's, you know, you can still see that they've got a long way still to go. And then I'm not sure about the depth and breadth of things like the maps and how the maps would work in the way like the warships thing with the maps works really well, I think. It's proportionately and everything for that kind of tournament and to entertain people. It's kind of like having an octagon, whereas in War Thunder it feels more like there's this really, really big water and landmass area, and they could be fighting at either end of the continent, and you could still do things with you know, you'd have to have the predefined act, but it feels much more like a big fight breaks out, a big brawl breaks out in a huge parking lot and you don't know where the action's going on, whereas wargaming's like everyone's locked inside the cage now, go fight.
I think if Gaijin were going to do it, I think they would have to add a lot of infographics, because like you said, you could literally, with World Warships, you can literally stick a camera up in the top, essentially the top corner of the room, just pointing down at an angle, and you could cast the entire match just like that if you really wanted to, because everyone can see everything. But as you say, in War Thunder, you literally can't see everything from one position, and so they would have to add some map overviews with like territories and map possession and the positions of all the vehicles and where they're looking. They'd have to somehow, like if it was ground, for example, they'd have to somehow work out a way of integrating the smaller map that the tanks play on and the bigger map that the planes play on. But yeah, if they could do that, it would be amazing.
It is very interesting to see some of the tournaments that already play and just to see how casting is done and the difference. It's very interesting. I
think that where they might be able to get a lot of ideas from for either of them, actually, I think, for the camera topic, would be I'd probably look at Formula One. If you look at how that's developed over the years, I think that there's lots of arguments why that's easier in some ways because, you know, it's a fixed track, so blah. But essentially, you've got the same thing with the maps, and I would say it'd be worth both of the companies investing some time looking at where would we position, like pre-position camera crews. If you thought of it and mapped it out like this is like a Formula One race, where are we going to get the good angles? Where's the action likely going to be? Or, you know, and again, like in an F1 race, there's whole areas of the strip that are completely empty and there's nothing going on. You know, the trick is to have 20, 200 cameras, whatever it is, and say, okay, and then you need a good direction and production team who can say, okay, now we're switching to this camera because there's something going on there. That might change the dynamic with the people doing the casting, the commentators, because they might have to be more reactive, you know, inform themselves in advance about who's there and what they're playing and that kind of thing. And then as the play and the camera scenes roll forward be a bit more like, oh wow, now we're seeing this and this ship versus this other ship or this other tank on this corner here, and you know, and kind of not entirely improvised, but a little bit more reactive or something than it
So
being more.
interestingly, that's the way that Wargaming wanted us to do King of the Sea. So the idea was that one of the casters would be in the game doing their normal thing, like flying around with their own camera. The other caster wouldn't be in the battle at all, and is literally just watching the feed. That was going to be me. The problem with that, and I threw my teddies out a little bit, was because if you try that, the constant cutting, because the camera cuts literally every 2 seconds, it takes you about 2-3 seconds to work out what you're looking at, like I was saying earlier. And if you're a caster who's having to constantly talk about what's going on and sound knowledgeable, it just turns into, at least if you're me, it just turns into, this is a cruiser sitting next to that's a destroyer backing, these are some torpedoes, and you never actually say what's going on because you're constantly just describing what's on the screen visually. And so, like, I honestly don't know in some sports how they actually physically do it. It's a bit like I don't understand how newscasters keep talking while someone else is talking in their ear. Don't get it. I couldn't do that. And so they'd have to come up with some way of being able to have all those different camera angles, but then still having a caster or 2 casters or 3 casters talking coherently about both what's going on in the battle, but also what's on the screen at the moment. And that would be incredibly difficult to do.
I just had a weird idea here in the midst of this, because Grumbles, you mentioned Formula 1, and just kind of imagining Formula 1, but with World of Warships players. Like, we're literally talking empty out New York City, have them all start at 2 different ends, and then try to race to the other part in just free roaming. But they can't go down a street where somebody else is already going. Like, that is literally what Formula 1 would have to be, or would end up being, if you combined the two. So it's just a weird idea that popped into my head. How would we do this? How can we do this? Can we please do this? I don't know why. My brain's weird sometimes. Okay.
Open world Formula 1.
Yeah, open world Formula 1. There you go. But I think it could be cool to see a larger scale tournament for War Thunder Naval, with the use of the battleships and the power they have and the different other ships that are in it, in a King of the Sea style kind of thing. I think that could be cool. They have the framework. They have some really cool, interesting ships. So yeah, let's. I would love to see that, because something that War Thunder does well, and I think we're going to see more and more of it now that we see more and more battleships coming in, is that the skill shots of placing your shots in the midst of a cruiser and then absolutely detonating it because you know where the magazines are, that could be big. It's the same as kind of knowing how far forward does the citadel of a certain ship go and what angle do I need to be at to place them so that I hit that tiny piece of armor that is good enough for me to penetrate through and actually get reliable citadels in one of the warships. Like, skill shots, those are cool, and that's something that War Thunder could really bring to the table.
It's a slightly differently paced game as well, I think.
Oh yeah, very different.
There's a bit of I haven't done that much naval, to be honest, but I get the impression that the scale is wider. So you've got the little PT boats, all the way up to the massive battleships, and having a match that's got all that stuff in it going on at the same time could be really cool, because then you've got like the fast, zippy torp boats mixed in with these gigantic battleships, and the footage being really cinematic of watching all the guns going off on the battleships and stuff. And I think the engagements would last a little bit longer with the bigger ships.
Yes.
That could be really cool.
I'm gonna mosey us on to the next little piece of topic here. This is not going to be a long segment, but I just want to talk a bit about this dream and this chase for high tiers that people seem to have in these sorts of games. Always kind of wanting, I need to hit the highest BR. And one thing I want to just caution people about in War Thunder is don't do it. Don't do it. find the BR that you enjoy and stick to it. Because, and here's kind of the nail in the coffin for that is, even the community team at Gaijin are sitting on their official streams and saying, don't go for high BR. Like it's gonna be a bad experience if that's the only thing you are gonna be chasing. So find your BR and lock into it. Because unlike Warships, unlike World of Tanks, there's a significant difference in style of play as soon as you hit a certain BR. Because suddenly you have thermals, you have darts, you have all of these different things that allow you to see for miles and miles and miles and miles. And it's suddenly, it's no longer skill, it's a reactionary playstyle. And that's going to be bad for a lot of people. So just a little PSA there. If you enjoy the slower, more skill-based kind of finding your target because you see them move through a window when you're sitting there in your Tiger 1 and you know that, okay, these are going to move there and I need to point my gun this far up and thump, then if you enjoy that, then stick to that. There's a massive difference when you get further up. And honestly, I'm starting to feel that myself when it comes to War Thunder. So, yeah. Any of you want to weigh in on that, or are we just gonna zoom?
I'm kind of lucky with it because most of the things I want to play are kind of pretty low to medium end. I'm not into the modern stuff, so it doesn't bother me one bit. People are like, oh, you don't have such and such. So I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Partly because I know I'll get blipped up there anyway. It just genuinely doesn't interest me to play the modern stuff. So I got lucky in that regard. But I do notice it, though, that some of the stuff when you, like you said, you get to like, beyond 3 and you get into some of the 4s and whatever, just to have that one particularly iconic vehicle or whatever. And it's like, okay, the ships, it doesn't matter so much. The ships is just a blast no matter what overall. The mixture of the different types and everything really, really helps that a lot. And the fact that you can take your planes up too. So you've got a good mixture of stuff going on to keep it fresh. But for the tanks in particular, it's it can be quite painful.
It can indeed.
For me, I haven't played much high. Well, I haven't played any high BR. I think my highest BR is between 6 and 7, something like that. So I've got to like mid BR. But I can obviously talk about World of Warships. But I recently just randomly went, I'm going to start China, and I'm having a blast. Just like BR 1, 2. It's so much fun, and okay, everyone might not share that enjoyment, but I just like the simplicity of it. I like the fact that everyone's a bit more on a level playing field, kind of. That the engagements last a little bit longer a lot of the time because everything's slower, and you're basically just throwing rocks at each other, and so it just lasts a little bit longer. Whereas my experience of watching, at least, top BR play on people's streams is that it's either they just die or they just kill someone. There's nothing in between. There's no like, oh no, he disabled my track, I'm going to back behind this thing and repair. And then like, no, because of the ammunition and the armor up there, pretty much everything just dies as a one shot.
Yep.
And that just isn't interesting to me because it's far more Twitch reaction-y and less tactical.
I'm right there with you.
So to me, lower BR to mid BR is just more interesting. And I don't get this whole, especially in World of Warships, this whole like, oh, I got to get to tier 10. Like, why? Because they're the most powerful ships. Like, but as you go up through the tiers, all the ships get more powerful.
Yeah.
So they're not. Like, but you're always top tier. Like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But
there's no secret prize.
In World of Warships, at least, there are bonuses for being bottom tier.
Yeah. And there's
there's
no cake. There's no cake at tier 10. I can guarantee you that we've tried to get cake, but no. Church of England said no. Sorry. We're gonna move on to a few topics that are probably gonna go a bit quicker. Who knows? Because I know there's gonna be a bit of a discussion towards the end on a couple of things. Twitch has recently done some changes, and all of us are Twitch streamers. Dun dun dun. Who knew? One thing that I really loved that they brought in recently was the artist recognition badge, and the way of kind of saying, this emote was created by this Twitch account. Like if your artist is on Twitch, you can actually attribute your emotes to them, and I think that's really cool. What kind of like, have you seen anything from this, Grumbles? Like, have you had any pop up and see artist badge?
So, I mean, the first thing I did was assign the artist badge for Rajira, who does most of our channel work and certainly all the professional stuff. And it was a sort of a, really a real pleasure to be able to do that and give that recognition. The thing about the emote attribution, I think, is pretty cool. I just think they could have done a better implementation of it, because they made it so you have to do every single one of them individually.
Yep.
Rather than making it like a table or something, or a checkbox. And once you've got artists assigned, you just go tick, 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 done. So that was a bit frustrating, but I'm still happy that it's there, and at least you've got that opportunity to do that attribution. I noticed it actually takes a few moments as well, because it goes and checks that there's nothing wrong with that account or whatever as well. I assume does something in the background.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about this as a badge once. I think we did.
Could well be, because I think I do think it's a very, very cool thing. I think that people really appreciate artists and the emotes and things. Obviously, it's an integral part of the whole experience. And bringing this in, it feels like one of those things. Now it's there. It's like, why didn't we just have this all along?
Yeah.
And maybe they can do other things. Who, heaven forbid, if we get to a point where there's some kind of deals for licensed music and all that kind of thing. Imagine having where you could credit independent artists or music that you've made with people or the producers, or it could go anywhere, right?
Yeah. Stats, what's your first impression of this new badge system?
So technically, I am a Twitch artist, because I have made a couple of emotes for people.
Hey!
So I've actually been attributed as the creator of a couple of emotes on Killabin's channel, for example. What I don't know, and I actually literally just went then to check, is I don't know what it presents as. So I've accepted the attribution to a couple of his emotes, but I have no idea. Does it give me a badge? Does it give? I don't know. I can't find it.
As far as I know, it allows people to see that, okay, when they go over this, that this emote was made by this person, and it should also block them together with other emotes made by the same artist.
Okay, it might be because I'm a moderator in the channel, so I can't see it, but yeah, I'm not seeing that right now, so I don't know how practically, how well implemented it is, but it's a great idea. I actually watch a streamer called Casey, who's actually a professional emote artist, among other things. And she was talking about the other day, and I think if you're an artist, having your work credited is really, it's not important to your success necessarily, but it's just nice. It's just good manners almost.
Yeah.
To credit people for what they've done. And I'm a big proponent of making sure that, I don't use any copyrighted work. I don't have the rights to do so. Making sure I don't use any copyrighted music that I don't have the rights to do so. And if I do use something that's got a certain license, that I credit the person that created it. And so from that point of view of just people being credited correctly, it's just a really nice thing to see. And as you say, it doesn't necessarily just need to include visual art. It could include other things as well.
Definitely could be something there. And I know we already talked a bit about the ability to maybe have a different style of mod badge, but I'm not sure that's so smart, because we're literally talking about something that needs to be global, or globally recognized at least. But they've also included a couple of other badges, which I love the idea of, but, and with that but, I'm gonna send it over to you guys. What do we think of the no audio and no video badges?
Grumbles?
I mean, I think that they have had a very interesting idea. Possibly some kind of alcohol or something else was involved when it came to the implementation meeting. Like, how could we do this and make this really fun and worthwhile and meaningful? Because it doesn't currently seem in any way to be actually linked to anything functionally. So it's up to the users, the viewers, to go and choose it for themselves. So mostly what we've seen is either no one's noticed it, no one cares. That probably takes care of the vast majority. and then the rest are folks just having fun with it. Let's call it that, trolling, whatever, saying, "Oh, I'm just going to put this on." And in the ones that I've seen, it's clearly like not so much on my channel, but on other channels, they're clearly just taking the mickey because they're like reacting to chat perfectly, but saying that they've got no video or audio. And it's like, either you've got you've got a producer in your ear telling you what's going on and you should be working the COTS tournament or something, or or you're just having a laugh with that badge. So I think it's an interesting idea. They're very prominent, very like visually, it's very, very clear. I noticed today that you have to pick like for your global identity one, and for the longest time it was annoying me because I like having my tick badge. At first I felt embarrassed almost having it, and then I got used to it, and now I'm like, I this is a nice thing because you can go and support people, and people appreciate it and recognize and whatever. And if nothing else, it helps you stand out in the chat in a way of like, your engagement with communities and people. It's interesting that you have to choose or it seemed, unless I could have done it wrong, it is me after all, but it looked like you have to choose that as your global identifier badge. So I was like, well, hang on a minute. What if I am watching genuinely, or I can't listen because I'm on live stream or something, but I go and say hi to one of you guys or something, but I can't hear what your response is? That could be a way of telling you, oh, look, he's got audio off or whatever. But in order to do that, I've got to go and change my global identity badge, which means that there's a higher probability that I'll get missed in the chat when I say something in the first place. So that seems a little bit odd.
Yeah. No, there needs to be something more there. The badge system is great, and it's a good idea to kind of identify and show who you are. And I've worked hard for my partner badge, and I'm damn well gonna keep it. But I know that it could be a good way of identifying, like you say, when you pop into somebody's stream while you are streaming yourself, or not necessarily able to listen, but you have it on in the background and you can see stuff happening on a different screen to kind of denote that, okay, I'm here, I'm hanging out. But this is literally why we have the lurk command, a lot of us. So what's your thought there, Stats? Do you have any ideas?
Much of the same. If you give someone on the internet a pretty badge, they, some of them are going to choose to swap whatever it is they currently have for that, regardless of what it should actually mean. And this happened to me the other night, where a bunch of my viewers, I'm not going to call anyone out by name, but a bunch of my viewers had gone in and selected one or other of those badges. And I know full well that they're, both listening and watching, because they're literally reacting to things that I'm doing and listening to my voice and answering questions and stuff. And if you ask them, they'll just say, well, it's there and I can do it, so I have. I'm like, okay, fine. But it really devalues what it should be for, which is both for accessibility. So if someone is blind and they're just listening to the stream, which is totally something that Twitch should be supporting, or maybe if they're deaf and they're not listening and they're just watching, but then also just simply, I've had someone the other day who was like driving in a car and they're just listening to the cast, to the stream.
Done that?
And they typed in chat like, I'm not watching, just so you know, I'm not watching, I'm just listening. And it means that you can respond to them differently, because if they come in chat then and you know that they're not listening, or you know that they're not watching, like sometimes people will come into my chat and they'll say hi to me, but I'm on voice with people and they're talking to each other, and so instead of responding vocally, I'll just wave.
Yeah.
Like point at the camera and just wave, so they know that I've acknowledged them. And obviously if they've got the no video symbol, then I won't do that. But you can't trust it at the moment because people are just choosing whatever they like. And so we were talking, before we started, about how they could automate it in some way, so that if you mute the stream, then you get the no audio badge. I think that might have privacy issues, because I don't necessarily want the streamer to know, or I definitely don't want the audience to know if I've muted the stream. But maybe it could be like streamer only or something like that.
Here's an idea that quickly struck me, because you have with a lot of these gifted subs and so on, you get the option, do you want to share that you've just resubbed or something? How about having the option of, okay, you click mute, and then going, oh, you've just clicked mute, do you want to enable this as a badge?
Yeah,
to let the streamer know.
Someone in my chat suggested a more extreme version, which would be if you select the no audio badge, it mutes your stream. So you cannot have audio and have the badge.
I mean, that could honestly be an option.
Because then people aren't going to do it just for the fun of it, you know?
Yeah.
I think we were talking about this a little bit beforehand. So, like, where my thinking goes on it was, I'd really rather see things, and maybe this is just opening the door to this. I'd really rather see things that were a little bit more specific, or worded and imagery slightly different, whatever. But give people, for example, accessibility related things like. Hearing impaired or, colorblind, vision impaired, you name it, so on and so forth. And Stats, you had a good idea, didn't you, with language?
Yeah, it occurs to me while we were talking earlier. So I'm an ex-English teacher. I taught English for 5 years. And so something that I'm very aware of constantly when I'm on the internet interacting with people is that they're not necessarily first language English. And if they're not first language English, they're not necessarily that strong at English. And so I try, if I can, during my streams, if I know that someone maybe doesn't quite have the level of English that some of the other viewers have, I'll try, if I can, if they ask me a specific question, to just simplify my language a little bit, slow down, talk a little bit more clearly, like I would do if I was teaching. And it would be really nice if you could have a voluntary badge that says, like, hey, the language that you are currently using in your stream is not my first language and I'm not very confident with it, so that the streamer knows if they want to talk to that person, maybe they just want to talk a little bit more simply, and help that person understand what they're saying. Because particularly with an English language stream, as a first language English streamer, you get a lot of people coming into your stream who are learning English and they're literally there to help with their English learning. Yeah. And I find that really interesting as an English teacher. It's a bit of an edge case, but I think it would be really nice to have a little badge that just says, like, learning English or whatever it happens to be.
I'm on board with that. I think that's cool because there's plenty of times where I'm sitting there as somebody who streams in English, but I am Norwegian. I get a lot of Norwegian people in my stream naturally, but then sometimes they kind of go, "Can I speak Norwegian here?" And if they were to have that badge letting me know that they're not necessarily that confident while speaking English, I would then go, oh, yeah, sure. Then I'll do the translation. Like, I prefer people speaking English by all means, but if I knew that, if I had that information, I could then go, okay, let's calm down the rules a bit. Let's be a bit more welcoming, a bit more open, and have that conversation, because I think that could be good.
Mm-hmm.
It's also it's a really interesting conversation starter as well, because languages, like I talk about languages and accents and stuff all the time in my stream because it's just a personal interest of mine, and I think it would just be a really interesting conversation starter as well. If someone says, "Hey, I'm learning English," like, cool. How long have you been learning English? Have you taken formal classes, or are you just learning on the internet, or whatever it is? And I think that would be a really interesting thing to talk about.
What's your favorite word, and why is it spelunking?
No. Spelunking. Turgid.
I'm just curious.
Turgid. My favorite word, turgid.
Turgid, that's a good word. I always like moist, but I think that's partly because of the way people react to it.
Pineapple.
Here's a question for you, Stats. I don't know about second language and this kind of thing. I don't want to, step on anybody's toes. But is that how you got to know Painsaw? Sorry, Painsaw. I couldn't resist it. Sorry, buddy.
Do you know what's really interesting? I had someone in my stream the other day who said, "I'm learning English. I'm not very good yet." And they said they find Killerben and Painsaw easier to understand than me, which I found really, really interesting.
Wow.
I can understand Killerben because Killerben is very standard English, very clearly spoken. But they said they could understand Jirak, who's got a very strong. Well, actually, no, not very strong. He has a Scottish accent.
You stole my thunder because I was going to say, what's it, Jirak?
and Painsaw as well.
But wait,
which is really interesting.
So they found a big difference between you and Killerben?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay, that I find weird because you both have a very fairly similar and very distinct diction and very. How do I say this without sounding stupid? It is very close to the Queen's English.
Yeah, I would say that. So there's no such thing as standard English, but it's commonly referred to as standard English.
Yeah.
So if you speak like you come from Surrey and Kent, basically that's. standard English, and yeah, like. But the thing is, that's not his native accent. So he sort of acquired it the same way I've acquired sort of a weird accent by studying at different universities and traveling around the world like that. So I occasionally, because I live in the West Country, I live at the bottom of the Cotswolds, and so I occasionally come out with a West Country R.
I was going to say R. I don't hear a lot of R's in your accent.
So occasionally come out with an R, and a few Americanisms as well, like from my year in the States, like I say gotten and not got. And we've both been through that. Like I think anyone that goes to university or works abroad or anything like that will naturally pick up a slightly different accent and different ways of talking. But generally, that makes you easier to understand because it sort of brings you more towards the average, you know.
That's true. I always get the where in the States are you from, or where did you learn your English? TV. That is literally where I learned how to pronounce my words. But it's gotten less pronounced over the years because of, well, hanging out with a lot of Brits and a lot of Norwegians, oddly, too. And then suddenly it kind of dissipates into my own thing. But yeah, no, any other badges? Like we talked a bit about colorblindness and so on. Like any other ways we could identify? Could it be? And I know this is a bit of a controversy for some on Twitch. Could it be a thing to identify gender, as in he, him, they, them? Like, is that a thing that could be used for badges?
How would you do that though? Because there's so many different ways that people identify themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you could encapsulate that in a badge system.
Yeah, no, I understand. I like conceptually, and then my head almost exploded as I thought, but that's 25 badges or whatever. I'm going to get it wrong one day, and it'd be like, oh.
So I used to be a civil servant until quite recently, and so my brain immediately jumped to like the official list of 59 accepted genders or whatever it is that we have, and I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure how practical it would be. And you know, and if you manage to cover the vast majority of what people might identify as, there's always going to be one person who's like, hey, that doesn't describe me. Yeah. And then they're going to feel left out. But so I think it's safer just not to have anything.
Could it then be like if we go the route of badges, could it be something where you have cis and non-cis, so that you know that okay, this is non-cis, and then you could go, how do you identify?
Or maybe they could just have the thing where I don't know, for your regulars and whatever, whether you can there's a bit of your profile where you can fill in what you want your pronouns to be.
Yeah.
And so if someone's interested, they can just mouse over your name or click on your name, and it'll just pop up. Yep, this person wants to be called he, him, or whatever.
Yeah. No, I'd be honest.
It's not something that's constantly in your face, but it's just accessible information if you want to know.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
Just
something go ahead.
Oh, so this there you go.
After you.
The about the blind one that made me think of that in the first place is that, or visually impaired, whatever, because there's a fella in that I met through Hulu's community. I think it was LA County or something like that. And he's actually like legally blind, so he types in chat always in uppercase. And everywhere you go, it takes everyone a while to adjust. And I was like, stop shouting. And he's like, I'm not shouting. This is the only way I can read my text. I'm legally blind. I can send you the certificate, you know?
Yeah, no, I've had that too. I've had that too. And then as soon as they kind of told me, I was like, okay, fair enough. Then I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But I think it'd be cool if you had it'd take a while to get used to any of these systems, but it'd be pretty cool if they had just that visual clue and people are like about to jump on there. Why is that person shouting? Or if it's like, oh, hang on, that's probably not a thing. Kind of that'd be interesting. Again, could be abused or whatever, I suppose, to some degree. But
I would actually counter that with the fact that Twitch can do that client side, and they have to a certain extent. So now you have some font options. So that user could, instead of typing in all caps, they could actually change all of the font that the chat is presented in, and so that everyone's is presented in like 24-point font or whatever. There are also third-party ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the only reason I say this, I used to work with a lot of accessibility requirements at work, and a lot of that stuff can be done locally on that person's client to make things easier for them.
Just had a tiny bit of a robot moment there as you talked, but I think we caught that.
Do you need me to repeat?
No, I think we're good.
No, not important. It's fine.
I think we're good.
I was just saying they could they could do it using their browser settings essentially, or the native Twitch settings for fonts.
Yeah, I just feel like this is something that should be available through Twitch and not necessarily have to go third party. I feel that's
there's no reason why other viewers need to see that.
No. By all means, it isn't. Speaking of people shouting and getting excited and knowing stuff about others, we are now moving swiftly along to Know Your Role. I think this has become the role-playing segment. I think we're permanently calling this Know Your Role for some strange reason.
It needs a jingle.
It does need a jingle. Grumbles, get on that for next time.
Know Your Role.
And now it's time for Know Your Role.
Honestly, we should have something. We should have something for all of these little bits for people to know that we're rolling into something new. We are all avid role players, and in fact, I am currently planning and plotting a new little thing for 4 players. And multiple times when we've talked about role playing and such, I know Stats has slid into my DMs and said, "Ooh, I like this thing." And when I first time approached you and asked if you might want to be part of the podcast, you said, yes, I have a lot to talk about. So, and from that, I know that you are interested in role-playing games. And I just kind of want to ask you first, like, what was your first experience with role-playing games?
Oh, man. So this is going to be such a trip down memory lane. So for me, I associate role-playing with my teenage years. I haven't really done that much role-playing as an adult, but I spent, so from the age of 11 through to 18 when I went to university, and a little bit into university as well, I was role-playing constantly. So I was very lucky to fall into a group of friends who just became completely besotted with role-playing. And we were fortunate to go to a very nice school with some very supportive teachers who let us do it as an after-school club and all this kind of stuff. And so my first experience of role-playing was actually on a school trip. We went to, I can't remember if I was 11 or 12, but around that age. And we went on a school trip to France. And to get to France from England, we went on the ferry. And it was quite a long crossing, like the longer crossing over to the northwest. And so we were on the ferry for a few hours. And one of my friends, he hadn't told us, he just got out of his backpack an original print Dungeons and Dragons starter box.
Ooh.
So like I don't know what year it was, but like it's like late 60s, early 70s, something like that. It was his dad's. And his dad apparently had just given it to him, like, maybe there's something to do on the journey, son. And so he just like calls over his best mates, and we all sit around one of the tables in the cafeteria, and he plumps this red box down and opens it up, and like a magical world of wonder and mystery spilled out onto the table. All these little character cards and pencils and pencil erasers and dice. And from that point on, we were all just completely addicted. And that just consumed our evenings and weekends and summers for the next few years. And so we started out with Dungeons and Dragons, original edition Dungeons and Dragons. Literally the starter box that covers like levels 1 to 4 or whatever, with a very, very basic rule set. But then from there, we went on to Games Workshop stuff. So we left Dungeons and Dragons behind for a little while. And we discovered the first thing that we played was Hero Quest, which was a very simple board game. So it's just a non-expanding board that just sits in the middle of the table, and it has set rooms on it. And you play a little character, and it's basically like a card and dice game. No role-playing, really. It's just a card game. And then from there, we went on to Advanced Hero Quest, where the board is made up of little tiles that you lay kind of randomly, and it makes up a dungeon. And from there, we naturally progressed back into Dungeons and Dragons as a proper role-playing game by the time we were about 13. And then a bunch of us also split off and did some live-action role-playing. So I lived in South London, and fortunately there was, within about an hour bus ride, there was a place in Chislehurst in Kent called Labyrinth. It's actually still there. And they were a live-action role-playing company based in Chislehurst Caves, which is a massive man-made cave system that was partially dug out by the Druids thousands of years ago, and then more recently dug out as an air raid shelter during the Second World War. And it's just this huge, like mind-bogglingly huge complex of caves. And but it's all just tunnels because it's all man-made. So there's no dangerous stuff down there really. It's all flat. It's like a railway tunnel basically. But like a total maze of left and right turns. And so a bunch of us, like 5 or 6 of us, would spend some of our weekends down there, Saturday and Sunday, like 9 hours underground, no lighting of any kind, complete pitch black most of the time, doing live action role playing. On top of that, and so yeah, I just have such fond memories of some of my friends and their characters. It's kind of hard to separate in my brain whether I miss my friends most fondly or whether I miss their characters most fondly. And I can still, even this many years later, because that was like 25 years ago, I can still tell stories. Like I could still tell you stories about the characters and what they got up to, and remember that time when, and all that kind of stuff. And this stuff really sticks with you. And I think for kids, it's really, really good stuff because you're sitting around interacting socially. There's well, at least when I was playing, which is something I want to talk about, there was no technology involved. It's all pen and paper. And you're learning social skills, you're learning problem solving, you're learning creativity if you're the DM, because you're learning about writing, authoring, publishing, and the creativity that goes into those kind of things. Like people don't realize that creating a campaign, it's like writing a novel.
It is.
Like it's that kind of level of complexity. And playing a character is almost as complicated in terms of working out how is this character gonna react to this thing, because it shouldn't be the way that I would react to it necessarily. And how do you do that in a way, like, so for example, one of the most difficult things is how do you play a character that has some character flaw without it being really divisive? So if you want to play a character that's like chaotic good, for example, in D&D terms, they're going to do things occasionally which are a little bit edgy, a little bit people don't quite like it. And doing that without breaking the group up and turning the other players against you is quite difficult. Because you might have like a lawful good paladin or something in the group who just always wants to do the right thing in their terms, which is going to be the legal thing. But maybe like the chaotic good character wants to steal from the rich to give to the poor kind of thing. And it creates some really interesting dynamics with these players trying to work out how their characters are going to react to it, but in a way that's not going to break up the group.
This is why I generally don't allow evil being played, because most people in our daily minds and how we are either neutral good or lawful good. That is our general way of being humans. I would venture out and say that about 90% of humans are in there. And then you have certain people that tend to go other directions, but the playing of an evil character is so hard, and it's that divisiveness that you talked about. It is
the
such
only way
a
I've
big
seen
difference.
it work properly is with like someone coming in not as a full-time player, but as sort of a played NPC, essentially, where they're there as a spy. So like you find out that someone at school also does role-playing in a different group, and you're like, hey, would you like to come and like play a few sessions with us one day? And the DM comes up with a really creative way of bringing them in for a few sessions. And the way that I've seen it work really well is a player was brought in as a spy. And so this player is sitting pretending that they are a member of the group. And of course, all the players know what's going on, but of course the characters don't. And so this player is playing this not evil character, but someone who has an agenda that's not in the best interests of the group. And so they're passing notes backwards and forwards to the DM, saying what their character is doing, because of course they can't say it out loud.
Yeah.
And so they're passing notes backwards and forwards, saying, I'm going to steal the document, or I'm going to like sabotage their kit, or whatever it is. And there's this fantastic dynamic going on until eventually the characters discover the treachery and they have a big fight.
Enter dramatic fanfare here. Dun, dun, dun.
But it works because that player can then go back to their own group.
Yeah. No, that is one of the very few ways I've also seen that be able to do it. So that's but it's not something you can have there be part of an entire campaign. That is so hard. What is your most recent role-playing experience?
quite a long time ago, honestly. It was probably around I'd graduated from university, but I was still like hanging around working. But I had a bunch of friends who were students, and a few of them had a LARPing group. But you're still talking like 15 years ago or more. And I haven't done it since then. So I've got a bit of an itch because I've been watching, not to fangirl, but I've been watching Grumbles play Skinny Pete. He's called Skinny Pete, doesn't know why. And that's kind of rekindled my love of role playing, and I've really enjoyed watching all the dark side stuff in Atlas recently. Not just Grumbles, but some of the other streamers as well, who I've met through Grumbles' channel, and being able to follow an event like that from multiple angles through multiple characters' eyes, and see the way that the streamers or the players are sort of deciding, because it's quite natural for the streamers to talk out of character about what their character is doing and why. And it's really interesting to get the insights from multiple angles, and it's really interesting to see a character who you've watched be played through the eyes of the streamer from the other side of the lens, if you like, through a different streamer's camera.
Yeah, you see them only
because all you see is the character then.
Yeah.
And I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been my daytime TV for the last few weeks, and it's just totally rekindled my love and interest of role playing.
Speaking of which, I must say that Tiger of the Steppes is very much inspired by a certain Ivan.
Oh, good old Ivan. He gets everywhere.
Yeah. No,
it's really interesting though, watching V Rising, watching Grumbles play V Rising this last week. That you can, it doesn't have to be like a traditional role-playing game to add an element of role-playing into it.
No.
It can still be role-playing, but be pretty light. And I think, a game like V Rising, where it's just like this top-down isometric view and you're kind of running around clicking things, it can still work from a role-playing point of view, which is really interesting. It's sort of a testament to the players that are doing it, that they're that adaptable.
I know I've asked Grumbles about this, and I can't remember if I asked you, Stats, but the thing I'm writing for Jirak, Mari, Jetty, and Dante, could I interest you in being a guest once?
Yes.
Cool. And that's all we're going to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very excited.
So we're talking 3.5, by the way. So we're going old school.
Cool. So I thought I'd played 3, because I was having a discussion about this yesterday with someone. I thought that the version that I played when I was in school was 3.5, but I looked up the dates and it's impossible that it was 3.5, because that was introduced after I left school. So what I was playing, because I looked up the books, I'm like, oh yeah, no, those are the books that I had, is actually AD&D version 2 was the version I was playing.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a very different system.
Yeah.
Well, not very different, but it's different enough.
What's even more interesting is how much the books sell for.
Yes! Holy shit!
The official AD&D version 2 Dungeon Master's screen. It's a bit of cardboard with 2 creases in it. $50.
Yeah, and
Not bad.
if you have mint condition books out there, oh my god, you can make a whole heap of money. It is insane.
If you've got some stored away somewhere, now's the time. Seriously, they go for a fortune.
So Tiger will love this. I just workshopped a little joke.
Oh no. Yeah, lay it on me.
Well, it's not a bad bit of folding for a couple of creases. Come on, that's pretty good.
You know what? In Grumble standards, that's actually pretty good. I'll give you that one.
Okay.
I'll give you that one. But get out.
Now I can picture Stats' little emote going, get out.
Terrible.
Yeah,
I'm literally doing it right now, like live.
I think we're coming to a natural point where we can start to taper off towards the end. Because we have literally been recording for 2 hours and 42, so this might have to be one main episode and then with a little bit of a bonus content, or we roll it into one big one. We'll see. But there are 3 questions I want to ask you before we move on to something to smile about. And the first one is, given the choice of anyone in the world, who would you want to have as your dinner guest and why?
They have to be alive.
let's expand it. Let's go with dead too.
Okay, so there are two, and I'm not sure. So one person who's been an inspiration to me, and unfortunately I only discovered him after he passed away, is Christopher Hitchens. He was a journalist. He was born in the UK and then naturalized as a US citizen. And he covered a lot of geopolitical stuff, but his main thing was talking about and campaigning about how religion is affecting the American government. And I've read a lot of his stuff. He writes I can't think of anyone else who has an ability to put information together and just simply recall information and then put it together into a cogent argument. And some of his books are just incredible to read. And so, like, for example, he wrote a book about Mother Teresa that's really, really interesting. So him, I would love to have a conversation with him. He tragically passed away from cancer a few years ago. But the choice that probably trumps that is Commander Chris Hadfield, who is Canadian astronaut who was the commander of ISS, and he also did some shuttle missions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's just an incredible guy. His autobiography, I highly recommend his autobiography. It talks about his rise up through the ranks of the Canadian Air Force and then going into NASA and becoming an astronaut. And a very, very easy to read book, but has some very interesting insights that only an astronaut can really give you. And so, yeah, it would be him. I actually had an opportunity to meet him once, but unfortunately I was ill on the day that the conference was happening.
No.
So I couldn't go. I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted, but there's no way I could have gone.
Oh, two strong choices there. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Hadfield.
Interesting. And the second one here that kind of throws people through a loop whenever I ask this, if you could wake up tomorrow having gained one quality or ability, what would that be and why?
Okay. So while we've been talking, I've actually been making some notes. So I think it comes down to one of three. Let me just run through what those three are quickly. So one is, so I've gone for two classic ones. One is the ability to go invisible at will. Just because I think that would be kind of cool occasionally. Just like go into a meeting room that you shouldn't be in. Spy on them. Like go and watch what celebrities are up to. I don't know, whatever. Like you could get into some really interesting situations if you're invisible. Another one would be just the classic, which would be flying. So I've learned to lucid dream a little bit. A bit of a mission of mine, because I've never really been able to remember dreams my whole life. And so I just decided one day, because I was reading about lucid dreaming, I was like, hey, that would be a cool thing to aim for. And so I was like, right, I'm going to learn to lucid dream. But the first step of learning to lucid dream is learning to dream. So I had to learn to remember my dreams, which you can totally do. And that kind of unlocked it. And then I learned to lucid dream, which is a really interesting experience. And my first lucid dream was of flying. And it was an incredible experience. And I think you it would be amazing to have that experience in real life. And just, can you imagine if you just like, right, I'm going to go to Spain. And just fly to Spain. You don't need any air tickets. Presumably you'd need a passport if they figured out what you were doing. But it'd just be really cool to just go anywhere you like.
Yeah.
Presumably quite quickly. Kind of suck if you were flying at like 1 mile an hour. But,
I think we had that conversation with Rab, actually.
I just remembered, I think we did have the conversation with Rab. But the third one, which is one I haven't heard people say, is just the ability to roll back time a few seconds, a few minutes with the foresight or the hindsight of what just happened. So like it could be as simple as like I walked into my bedroom and I broke my toe on my bed, as I do quite often, because it sticks out. The ability to just click my fingers, go back 30 seconds and then not hit the bed.
Ooh.
Or like, you know, you're at a party and you just say something inappropriate because you've had a couple of beers and like just fingers and go back and don't say that thing. or like tell someone something that you wish you'd told them, or just something really simple like that. Just click your fingers, roll back the clock a little bit and be able to just do that little, not like your whole life, just one little situation, do it again. I think that would be a really handy but non-destructive power.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can see that. Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, no, that's very nice.
So I would go with that one.
Okay. No, that's a very nice one. I think a lot of people probably think, controlled time, but they think in a much grander scale. But honestly, when you said that thing about stubbing your toe, I'm like, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. Right on that one. Yep.
But here's the thing, right? Because I love that as well. But like, what do you remember of it? So you remember it distinctly happening. That phantom.
Yeah.
You could actually have some sort of mental breakdown because you
could
walk back into the room and you're like, oh no, don't do it.
So what gave me the idea for that is actually I love. This isn't a plug because I'm not sponsored in any way. I love Audible, and I listen to a lot of Audible courses while I'm walking the dog. And I've just done a course on metaphysics, and that stuff will break your head. That will, thinking about like time loops and can you go back and kill your grandfather and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it'd be really, you'd have to think about like, what would I actually know? and what the really interesting thing is, if I snap my fingers and I go and I'm back outside my bedroom, knowing that I'm going to walk in and stub my toe. Yeah. Is it actually possible for me to walk into the bedroom without stubbing my toe? Even if I know it's going to happen.
Or do you like smack your head on the lampshade or something? No, because you're so busy, you're staring intently at the edge of the bed.
Like I must avoid the bed, and then you trip over the dog and do it anyway. Yeah.
I like the idea that you do. Imagine, sorry, I'm just thinking about, you've just stubbed your toe, it's really painful, and then you get over it and you snap your fingers, right? And you go back, but you walk into, and there's somebody like, you know, your partner, whatever's in there, and you walk into the room with this really weird, fearful, but also like the remembering the pain kind of scrunched up face and like maybe a bit of a tear running out the corner of your face, and they just look at you like, what's wrong with you?
Stubbed my toe. No, you didn't.
I will do. I would have done. I don't know how to. I don't have a tense for this. I would have done. I don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah, we need a whole new. I need a whole new grammar system.
Oh no. No, please don't. Like, there's enough confusing grammar out there. I'm relearning German, by the way. So yeah, no, let's not. Last question of the three of let's get to know part of StatsBloke that probably hasn't been on stream or anything before. Is there something that you've dreamt of doing for a long time? And if so, why haven't you just done it?
So this is actually something that I've talked about on stream before, but like the big thing for me at the moment is I really want to get into voiceover. I want to get into, I don't know exactly what aspect of it, because there's voice acting, there's like commercial stuff where you're just like talking over commercial videos, doing advertising. It could be like training, any kind of stuff. Because I don't know why I just got into watching YouTube videos about audio equipment when I was sort of researching what to do in terms of a streaming setup, and that kind of led me to a couple of guys who do voiceover, because they tend to be very knowledgeable about audio, and it just really got me interested in the whole profession. And on top of that, I've had over the years of streaming, I've had a whole bunch of people come into my channel. It happens fairly regularly, saying, "Oh, you should do voiceover." And like one day I was like, maybe I will. And so I've just had this idea of getting into it. And but the problem is that it's like getting into acting. Like, it's a really, really hard thing to get into. But the basic first step that's required is I have to build an audio environment inside my house, which is not my house. I rent this house, that enables me to do quality recordings, because my streaming setup is not good enough to do voiceover, because I'm using digital filtering and that kind of stuff. And so it requires me to do some carpentry, basically. I'm the son of a carpenter. I can do carpentry. But the problem is I am the world's worst procrastinator. I'm not kidding. So the only reason that I eat meals is because A, I like eating, and B, I would die if I didn't. Like, I'm that kind of bad at procrastinating. Like, if I don't have to do something, I won't do it. I'm terrible. And so I've got it at some point. I'm very like mañana. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow.
Okay.
So that's the thing, right? And I need to build a little audio booth out of wood and insulation, and just get the F on with it. But that is my current project, at least mentally.
You heard it here, cool. Dear listeners. If you really want StatsBloke to get into voiceover projects, then support his dream, and
come around my house and build my booth for me.
Or that, if by all means, if you have somebody close by, you can send your email to statsbloke@bloke.com. No, don't do that.
So Stats,
No, I will do it. Just nag me. No, seriously, nag me.
Have you, I don't know if this is any good. This is a few years ago, but have you heard or seen on YouTube a guy called Booth Junkie?
Yeah, no, so seriously. So he's the guy. Mike Del Audio. He's
there
the
you
guy.
go.
Yeah,
exactly.
He's the guy that got me
I
into
was
it.
going to recommend that if you hadn't bumped into him already, because he's awesome.
Great. I've actually exchanged emails with him. He's a really nice guy.
That's super cool. Yeah. So have you watched this 2016 video called "A Voiceover Vocal Booth in 10 Minutes" for free?
I have. I actually rewatched precisely that video yesterday. Funnily enough. Yeah, no, he does that because he's on the road quite a lot, and he'll go into like a bed and breakfast or a rented apartment or something.
Yeah.
And he'll be sent an audition which you have to reply to immediately. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, oh crap, I need an audio booth, and he'll get like the sofa cushions and the bed comforter and make an audio booth in the wardrobe, which is fine. It's all fine, but it's no good as a permanent setup. So and I have done that kind of stuff. So I did something for oh man, what's his name? Oh, I'm terrible at remembering names off the top of my head. A guy in the World of Warships community who makes like artistic videos. He makes his own ship models and space pick shovel.
Yeah, there you go.
So I voiceovered one of his Christmas videos, and I did that way. I used my airing cupboard, and I got a bunch of duvets and pillows, and but it's not something that's permanent. So I need to get a permanent solution.
Well, there you go.
Airing soon on an Audible podcast near you.
Hopefully.
So what I want to see is I want to hear about is Stats walking his dog, listening to an Audible that he's done about metaphysics and what tenses to use when you're able to bend time.
We're talking some Inception level shit here.
Now we're into the audio equivalent of Inception.
What Will I would have said.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then he stubs his toe on a fence because he wasn't looking where he was walking.
Absolutely. I fell over a wall once walking the dog.
I feel like that needs its own episode.
No.
How?
I was listening to it. I was listening to an Audible course about physics, like particle physics, like serious stuff. And it was dark. It was nighttime walk, winter. And I just wasn't watching where I was going. And where I live in the West Country, we have lots of little stone walls that are like, like 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters high. It just fell over it. Just like totally like poof, straight over. Yeah. Meanwhile, like some physicist is talking in my ear about like gluons. Yeah.
And Macy just doesn't care. Like, what?
No, she probably came and sat on me or something. Yeah.
That's a lovely image for you.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the last segment of this podcast, something to smile about. It has become a staple in the podcast, and people keep bringing more stuff for us to smile about, and I absolutely love it. We do not have viewer/listener input this time, but I'd like to just jump in on mine very quickly because it's not very long. But I recently started a new job as community manager for Quora here in Norway, and as part of that, I am encouraged to share posts and share questions that pop up on the platform. But I made you have something in there called spaces or rooms, and I made my own space where I share stuff that makes me smile. And it's inspired simply because of this podcast and what we do here, because there's always something that pops up, and in a world that is so much focused on the latest variant of COVID or what they're called, monkeypox or whatever. I don't know what they're called, but certain geopolitical events and so on. Like being able to share something to smile about to people is something I look forward to every single week in every single podcast. So yeah, that's mine.
That's really cool.
And Stats, how about you?
So this is like I've been a fan of this podcast for a long time. I've been listening since episode 1, and I've always been thinking to myself like, what would I say? So this is a big moment for me, and so I've gone with something really weird. So I'm gonna say smells, but specifically smells, but specifically So I live in the countryside, so I'm surrounded by farms. Like it's a bit of a like small town, but like it's generally the whole region is just farms. And so there's a lot of smells going around because it's farmland.
Mm-hmm.
But this time of year, like at the beginning of the summer, you've got the smells of people's gardens, because there's a lot of farmhouses that have these beautiful like kitchen gardens, basically. So they've got like the roses are starting to flower, and they've got like honeysuckle, and there's, do you know what ramsons are? Like wild garlic, basically.
Yeah.
So the woods here are full of ramsons. So the whole place just stinks of garlic at the moment. And then like the farmers start doing things like they're fertilizing the fields, which has this sort of really earthy smell. And then the crops start growing, and you get like the smell of the rapeseed, or you know, whatever it is they're growing. But particularly at night time. So I walk the dog usually at nighttime after I stream. And at this time of year, it's starting to get quite warm at nighttime. It doesn't get as cold as it usually does. And maybe there'll be a little breeze. And because it's nighttime and it's dark, and when I walk, because I know the walks really well, I like to rely on my night vision. So, and when it's dark, I think your other senses kind of come alive a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're a bit more aware of what you're hearing and what you're smelling. And so I just love like walking around the farmland here and just smell, like these smells just drift across your nose. And it's very evocative, because you can imagine like what you're smelling. So you walk past a kitchen garden, you can't see it, but you can smell it. And so you're imagining all these really pretty little flower beds, and or you can smell the hay bales in the next field and things like that. And I used to have a convertible car, and so one of my favorite things to do in this convertible car was to go out driving at nighttime with the roof down, and just soak up all these smells that are going past you. It's just it's a very it's a very meditative thing to do. It's a very mindful thing to do, just to sort of let your mind focus on something you don't normally focus on. And so like consequently walking the dog is one of my favorite times of day, because I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm like walking along smelling things, and it's just a lovely time of day.
I like that.
Occasionally stumbling over a wall.
And occasionally stumbling over a wall, which don't smell of anything. Yeah. Which might be why I fall over them.
Yeah,
I can't
see,
smell
there
them.
you go. There you go. Make walls smell again, or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. But Grumbles has a double barrel for us today.
I do.
Yeah. What's your double?
So one's a little one that I just happened to pick up on this morning by pure coincidence. So we know geopolitical stuff and all that, and how that's had impacts in lots of different ways, and you see how it affects like ordinary people. So an example is Jean-Claude Van Schott, who I'm sure we all know. Lovely fella, fun streamer, War Thunder, and a few other things to boot. But that's what he's most known for. And he's been demonetized by Twitch because of the sanctions, or whatever, however you want to call it. That's what he calls it. So not going to get into all of the ins and outs of that. But it's kind of like, oh goodness, well, what do you do? So he's got donation links and ways that you can support and whatnot. But having to work, all of a sudden losing as a full-time streamer, your entire livelihood and all the rest of it all at once because of sanctions. And it's like obviously nothing that Jean's done, right? I mean, but the little thing was he's got some merch and everything, and I was watching Wingling Dragon. I've not been able to hang out there for a while, staying away from War Thunder and all those kind of things, and time zones and all the rest of it. And then just saw Wing on, went to catch up with him, saying hello, chatting, and I just noticed that he was wearing a Jean-Claude t-shirt. And I was like, that's pretty cool. This is a really nice way for one like CC and cool member of the community to show love and support for another, especially in these difficult times. And instead of being like, getting caught up in any of the other, shenanigans, whatever's going on in the world, just literally showing support. And I thought that was a really nice thing. So that made me smile. And the other one was Stats mentioned it earlier, and there's been several people, and it's just about my experiences with role-playing this time around and getting back into the dark side, but specifically that quite a lot of people have said things that I just really complimentary and just really warm my heart, and because you can feel vulnerable as a role player. I'm sure you guys can attest to that as well, and you're not quite sure, and then doing that to a live audience all the time and everything. And we've had people like Stats said, daytime TV, And a few other people have said things like, yeah, cancel your Netflix subscription and just go and watch this role play. And it's just really nice. Like, it's kind of like one of the best compliments you can get, you know, because I'm not in any way trained or whatever in any of this stuff. And came relatively late to it as well. So I have a super amount of fun of it, and have people basically, you know, sort of critique or compliment you in that way. It feels really kind of heartwarming. So thank you to those who've said those comments, and know that how much that means to me, and obviously to all the other role players. Like Stats was saying, it's really nice to introduce communities and people to other role players, and, you know, shouting them out, rating them, and just role playing with them, and showing people, you know, what they can do. It's a nice way to get lots of people recognized.
Definitely. And I can fully support the claims made by people after starting my full-time job. Being able to just kind of have a familiar voice in the shape of Skinny Pete that doesn't know why is very nice. It is very nice and very soothing. And also, several times I find myself kind of just sitting there looking over at that screen going, wait, I have to work. This is shit. And instead of getting caught up in the role play and the shenanigans you get into.
I've lost days. Days.
And that is a major
like,
credit.
I'll sit down, I'll put it on the side screen, and I'll do something else, like, while I'm listening and watching. Nope. It's so absorbing.
And it's such a major credit to Grumbles and the rest of the Dark Side RP community to be able to draw people in like that. It is. Yeah, it is massive.
You can't do it without everyone being there. It's
no.
It's an all or nothing immersive experience. It's really good though.
So yeah.
Well, I would like to, just for legal reasons, I would like to just formally apologize to any employers out there who feel like not getting their money's worth for the last 9 weeks. There's going to be a short break, mid-season break coming up, so get your work where you can.
This has been an absolutely fantastic episode of Exit to Port. Season 2, episode 5 is coming to a close. And without further ado, thank you, StatsBloke, for joining us. It's been great to have you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to Grumbles for being here as per usual.
Thank you both.
And without further ado, it's goodbye from me, Stats, and Grumbles. And we will see you guys. Well, you hear you guys. Well, you'll hear us. How do I ever do these outros? I don't remember.
I don't know. I think
you would have heard them.
Just, there you go. You would have heard them. And we'll see you guys in the next Exit. Goodbye.